delegates. I'm happy to greet you in Geneva for the tri-annual global workshop on regional human rights organizations on the theme of the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. This workshop is mandated by a Human Rights Council resolution 5215, adopted on 3rd of April 2023. In its operative paragraph 8, the resolution has requested the High Commissioner to hold in 2025 a workshop on regional human rights organizations to take stock of developments since the workshop held in 2022, including a thematic discussion on the role of regional organizations in relation to the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, based on concrete and practical experience of regional organizations working in the field of human rights, in order to share information on best practices, lessons learned, and possible new forms of cooperation. We have today in the opening session two of the co-sponsors of the resolution 5215, the main sponsor, Belgium and Armenia. I have the pleasure also to introduce to you the Director of the Global Operations Division of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, who will make the opening statement. Mrs. Marit Kohonen-Sharif, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Vladlen. Excellencies, distinguished participants, fellow panelists. On behalf of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, I really want to warmly welcome you to this workshop, which is convened under Human Rights Council Resolution 5215, under the leadership of Belgium and with a group of co-sponsors, including Armenia, Mexico, Senegal, and Thailand. So a cross-regional sponsorship that means a lot to this subject to us. You know more than me probably that regional human rights organizations are really vital links between universal human rights standards and the realities in respective regions. And you regional human rights mechanisms interpret global standards into a local context and bring local perspective back into the global conversation. So it's quite an important mutually reinforcing relationship between international mechanisms, United Nations, regional mechanisms, and obviously NHRIs at the national level. We support each other's efforts. We grow from each other's experiences. And the more we collaborate, the better we avoid duplication. We strengthen our collective voices for the rights and the people that we are fighting for. But also in these times and age of financial crisis, of the organization crisis, of multilateralism, that collaboration matters even more to us. I want to briefly refer to some examples of such cooperation so that you know that it's not just words, but it's actually very practical. So we have a fellowship program in the UN Human Rights Office that brings fellows from the Secretariat of Regional Mechanisms to Geneva to interact directly with UN human rights mechanisms, but also to meet with our own colleagues here in Geneva. And that really often that direct contact and engagement forms a good basis for future collaboration and strengthened engagement. So far, we've hosted 18 fellows from 13 regional mechanisms. And I think we have 3 of them in the room today with whom I met last week, and who can tell you about the cooperation, about the experiences they have had here. Every 3 years, we also have regular structured exchanges with regional mechanisms like this one. Last time in 2022, it was on business and human rights. And this year, obviously, you're going to be focusing on the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. We also have annual meetings of staff from secretariats of regional human rights mechanisms. That goes both with Geneva and the regions, but also cross-regional. And that's actually an important dimension of the cooperation. And we work on the implementation of a number of regional cooperation frameworks. There are many, and with most of you, we do have regional cooperation frameworks. I just want to mention the most recent one since our last meeting, and it is the new African Union UN Joint Human Rights Framework, which was signed in November 2023. It has a 4-year roadmap with focus on various themes, 8 thematic areas, and I'm happy to say that one of them includes climate change and environmental degradation. And so it should help us in strengthen our collaboration in that area with African Union human rights bodies. And then briefly, I want to just give you an example from each region about the kind of cooperation we've had over the past 2 years to enhance human rights protection in the relation to this year's theme. Obviously, we have many more areas of collaboration, but I think in order to kickstart the workshop, I want to focus on this year's theme. So in the Americas, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, we actively engaged with the Inter-American Court and the Commission to strengthen the legal discourse on the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. For example, before the Inter-American Court, we contributed to its landmark advisory opinion on climate change through a third-party intervention and participated as an expert witness in the La Oroya v. Peru case, which underscored the human rights dimensions of environmental harm. Our partnership with the Inter-American Commission also deepened. We, of course, we regularly participate in their sessions, we share information, but we also supported its special procedures during a country visit, including this year to Brazil on the human rights impacts of flooding. So you see how we make these mechanisms work together towards a better outcome at the regional and international level. In Southeast Asia, we provided technical assistance to the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights in the development of the ASEAN Declaration on the Right to a Safe, Clean, Healthy, and Sustainable Environment. That included, for example, providing expert advice to align the declaration with international human rights standards, but also some advocacy areas to address key gaps, such as protection of human rights and environmental human rights defenders, and a stronger recognition of indigenous peoples' rights. We hope that the declaration will be adopted next month at the 47th ASEAN Summit. In Africa, last year, we supported the second tripartite judicial dialogue, which brought together the African Court on Human and People's Rights, the East African Court of Justice, and the ECOWAS Courts of Justice on Human Rights and the Environment. And we really hope that meeting created some momentum for more broader judicial engagement on human rights dimension of environmental harm and sustainability in Africa. We also provided some technical inputs, substantive inputs to the African Commission on Human and People's Rights study on the right to a healthy environment, which in turn will inform the Commission's general comment. And in Europe, we have long-standing cooperation, but one of them, the most recent one, includes our submission where the European Court of Human Rights drew on our submission of this office in a landmark climate case of Verein Klima Seniorinnen Schweiz and others against Switzerland. We also participated in the sessions of the Independent Permanent Commission on Human Rights of the OIC, including on debates on the right to water. I just use this opportunity before I conclude to make a big plug to encourage all regional mechanisms to support their member states to adopt legally binding instruments anchoring the right to a healthy environment. I hope that this workshop can be an important contribution towards that aim, and we really want to encourage you towards that very concrete objective in your regions. Obviously, apart from areas of cooperation related to climate change and environment that I've talked about, we have many others, business and human rights. We work together on individual complaints mechanisms with regional mechanisms, which is a powerful tool, but also UN human rights treaty bodies continue to engage through joint statements and cooperation frameworks with regional mechanisms. And we also try to foster cross-regional cooperation. I mentioned that before, but one concrete example is the platform of independent expert mechanisms on discrimination and violence against women that our office supports, and the platform of independent experts on refugee rights. They bring together UN and regional independent experts on these topics, and it's a kind of repository for information and information exchange. So I think the examples I've given you just now, they're brief, but they highlight they are in a way testimony how regional mechanisms are critical partners for us on human rights technical cooperation and to anchor international human rights standards at regional and national levels. We also remain, of course, available to support those regions that don't yet have fully developed regional mechanism on human rights. We want to advance with you progress further in your context, but always, of course, bearing in mind international human rights standards. So with that, I've used up my time. I want to wish you success for the workshop, and I look forward to hearing about the outcomes. Thank you very much.
Many thanks. His Excellency, Mr. Christophe Payot, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Belgium, will make a statement in the opening session.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor for me to welcome you to this global workshop on enhancing cooperation between the United Nations and regional organizations for the promotion and protection of human rights. Now it's in 8th edition. The workshop continues to serve as a genuine multi-stakeholder platform, bringing together representatives from OHCHR, treaty bodies, regional human rights organizations, academia, government officials, and civil society. This year's topic, as you have heard, is the right to a clean and healthy and sustainable environment. For the next 2 days, experts will examine relevant normative policy and institutional frameworks at both international and regional levels. Through the exchange of best practices, identification of opportunities for enhanced cooperation, and development of innovative responses to emerging challenges, the workshop aims to advance the effective realization of this fundamental right. My country, Belgium, is proud to be part of a cross-regional core group alongside Armenia, Colombia, Senegal, and Thailand that has over the years led to efforts to advance a resolution aimed at strengthening regional cooperation on human rights. And I'm honored to be joined today by Mr. David Knyazian, Head of the Multilateral Policy and Development Cooperation Department at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Armenia. So welcome to Geneva, dear colleague. The resolutions instruments, namely the workshop, annual meetings of focal points, and the fellowship program, aim to foster dialogue and mutual learning among key stakeholders from around the world. Belgium firmly believes that enhanced cooperation between international, regional, and sub-regional human rights mechanisms serves as a powerful catalyst for the promotion and protection of human rights globally. This workshop reflects a shared understanding that cross-regional collaboration is essential to advance human rights for all. This idea is not new. The United Nations has long recognized the vital role of regional and sub-regional human rights mechanisms in advancing the global human rights agenda. The first resolution on regional arrangement was adopted by the General Assembly back in 1977. This commitment was further reinforced in 1993 when the Commission on Human Rights called for a deeper engagement between the UN and regional organizations, a call echoed in the Vienna Declaration and Programme of Action adopted the same year. Since then, both the General Assembly and the Human Rights Council have consistently reaffirmed this vision through a series of resolutions. The underlying principle is clear. International and regional mechanisms are mutually reinforcing. While human rights and fundamental freedoms are universal in aspiration, much of their judicialization and legal development has taken place at the regional level. Regional courts and quasi-judicial bodies play a significant role in shaping legal standards, reviewing laws and policies, and implementing human rights norms. Moreover, regional arrangements help localize international human rights norms and standards by reflecting the specific concerns of each region and responding more effectively to local needs. By fostering local ownership, they reinforce the universality and indivisibility of human rights, thereby strengthening and complementing global standards. And I would put this also in the context of the current UN reform, UN 80, when we try to bring more synergies within the system. I think through the cooperation with regional human rights mechanism, we also bring more synergies between the local level and international level. So I think this work is even more important in the current context. Ladies and gentlemen, as climate change continues to pose unprecedented threats to ecosystems and human well-being, the recognition and implementation of the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment has become more urgent than ever, making the focus of this year's workshop both timely and essential. A healthy environment is fundamental to the full enjoyment of a wide range of human rights, including the rights to life, health, food, water, and sanitation. The timing of this platform is particularly fitting to discuss recent key developments at the regional level, including the Escazú Agreement in Latin America and the Caribbean, and the advisory opinion on climate emergency and human rights issued by the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. It also offers an opportunity to reflect on long-standing commitments, such as Article 24 of the African Charter on Human Rights and People's Rights, the first regional instrument to recognize the right to a healthy environment. International cooperation is perhaps more important than ever if we are to safeguard our planet to the best of our ability for future generations. The reflections today and the recommendations that will emerge represent an invaluable contribution to strengthening international cooperation on human rights in today's complex geopolitical landscape. Let us reconnect in a world that increasingly drifting away from universal values that underpin the multilateral system. I would like to thank OHCHR for once again convening a diverse group of experts from across regions. And I warmly welcome all participants to Geneva for what I trust will be insightful and impactful discussions. And I was already encouraged to hear all the concrete examples of the cooperation that were just outlined by our colleague from OHCHR, and I'm sure there will be many more concrete proposals that will emerge from this workshop. Thank you for your attention.
Many thanks, Ambassador. Mr. David Kniazian, Head of Multilateral Policy and Development Cooperation Department of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Armenia, will make a statement in the opening session.
I thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we thank the organizers of today's workshop on such a pertinent topic. I'd like to express our appreciation to Belgium for its able leadership of the resolution on regional human rights organizations over the past years. The relevance and enduring value of this important initiative has only increased since its inception, particularly in today's context, as the human rights organizations are encountered with the adverse impacts of the erosion of multilateralism and challenges to the human rights framework. As a member of the core group of states, Armenia is pleased to contribute to today's workshop. The Human Rights Council Resolution 5215, which mandated this workshop, sought to examine the role of regional human rights organizations in relation to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. This theme is particularly timely and relevant in light of the growing impact of climate change, biodiversity loss, and land degradation, which pose serious setback on achievement of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and enjoyment of the fundamental human rights. The right to a healthy environment comprises, among others, healthy biodiversity and ecosystems. The environmental degradation and biodiversity loss are inextricably linked and must be considered together in a comprehensive and inclusive manner. Addressing these challenges requires not only a whole of government, but also a whole of society approach, alongside with governments and civil society, indigenous peoples and local communities, environmental human rights defenders, academia, women and youth play a crucial role in advancing climate action and biodiversity conservation. Distinguished speakers before me covered a lot of the topics which I would like to mention. However, I will focus in my presentation on two key issues when it comes to protection of this important right, notably inclusivity and participation. Dear colleagues, as you know, in October next year, Armenia will host the 17th meeting of the Conference of Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity. Organizing an inclusive multi-stakeholder COP is one of the primary pledges of Armenia's candidacy, and we are keen to promote multi-stakeholder, human rights-based and gender-responsive approach during the preparatory process and the COP itself. The Armenian presidency will strive to ensure full and meaningful participation of indigenous peoples and local communities as right holders and guardians of the biodiversity protection. Adoption of modus operandi of the new subsidiary body under Article 8J will be one of the important tasks, and we hope that the COP17 will deliver on this mandate in an effective and participatory manner, effectively ensuring that the voices, opinions, and approaches of the stewards of Mother Nature effectively shape the legislative processes within the COP. And in this regard, we are keen to cooperate with the regional organizations which attach importance to the participation, inclusive participation of the indigenous peoples and local communities. Women and youth are important agents of change in environmental protection. Gender policy implementation strategy of Armenia for 2025-2028, approved in April this year, sets specific climate-related objectives for the first time. Among them are conducting thematic studies of climate change-induced gender issues in the most affected spheres, setting climate change-related gender indicators, and elaborating methodology for collecting and organizing relevant data, encouraging women's participation and inclusion in professional programs, including vocational trainings, promoting women's participation in interagency committees at regional and community levels in the context of climate change mitigation and sectoral adaptation plans. I'd like to mention that throughout this year, we have organized side events involving regional organizations addressing aspects of gender streamlining in biodiversity protection, including with the European Union and other regional organizations. In 2024, in partnership with the UNICEF, the Climate Change Youth Advisory Board, adjacent to the Ministry of Environment, has been established to empower young people to actively engage in climate change related initiatives in Armenia and equip its members with the knowledge and skills necessary to effectively contribute to addressing climate challenges. And recently, a National Youth Statement ahead of COP30 in Belém has been published. A global review of the collective progress in implementation of the convened Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework will be one of the key items in the agenda of the COP17, and Armenia will advocate for a review process that is inclusive, human rights-based, and transparent, and involves civil society in elaboration and implementation of national biodiversity strategies and action plans. As a chairmanship or presidency, we are supposed to lead by example. And this year, we organized a very inclusive process for adoption of our national NBSUP, which involved all the stakeholders, academia, young people, women, non-governmental organizations. On all these matters, we look forward to collaboration with regional organizations. We already have very efficient cooperation with Council of Europe, OHCHR, European Union, African Union, International Organization of La Francophonie, and others in addressing the human rights aspects of biodiversity conservation and localizing them at regional level. Madam Director referred to the need to anchor international human rights standards at regional level. We would also be keen to explore the regional best practices and experiences in streamlining human rights in biodiversity conservation and to be able to include them in the outcomes of the COP17 on the biodiversity. In conclusion, I would like to stress that the incoming Armenian presidency of the COP will ensure that biodiversity conservation is aligned with human rights and that all relevant stakeholders are meaningfully participating in shaping responses to the evolving environmental challenges. We stand ready to cooperate with the regional human rights organizations to ensure that the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment is effectively integrated into the conservation efforts and outcomes of the COP17. I thank you, dear colleagues.
Many thanks, Mr. Kniazian. I would like to warmly thank the distinguished speakers in the opening session for their statements. And I would like to invite now the members of the panel 1 to the podium. Thank you once again.
Okay.
We don't see the. Okay, I'll make.
It's only 3 panels because the fourth one there was an issue with light. He will just be coming later. So we don't have to wait for Mr. Riese. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, the last speaker.
Yeah.
So we don't wait.
We don't.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Good morning. Distinguished participants, distinguished members of the panel, I have the pleasure to open agenda item 1 of the Global Workshop of Regional Human Rights Organizations, which will take stock of developments in cooperation between the United Nations and regional human rights organizations since the last workshop in 2022, and to identify areas of enhanced cooperation. The main objective of this session, the first agenda item session, is to share information on best practices, lessons learned, challenges, and possible new forms of cooperation between the United Nations and regional human rights organizations, and to identify concrete steps that could be taken to enhance such cooperation. I would like to point out a few questions or guiding themes for this panel. What activities have been, it's good to have a look at what activities have been undertaken to implement the recommendations of the 2022 workshop, which had the theme of business and human rights. These recommendations were published in the report on the workshop in document A/HRC/52/42, 52/42. What were the challenges and best practices in the implementation of these recommendations, and what progress can be achieved further? Another question that perhaps this panel can focus, and also the discussion after the statements, is where is the potential for strengthened cooperation, both between UN and regional human rights organizations, and regional human rights organizations between themselves horizontally? What concrete steps could be taken to this end? And also, we can have a look at the activities and initiatives that can be further carried out for such a cooperation, and what the regional mechanisms and regional organizations are planning to carry out in the next workshop, until the next workshop in 2028. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Wilson de Almeida Adao, who is the chairperson of the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child. He is a special rapporteur on investment and budgeting for children, and is also a member of the working group on the implementation of decisions of the African Committee of Experts on the Rights of Welfare of the Child. You have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. Your Excellency, Ambassador Christophe Payot, Ambassador Representative of Belgium, Excellencies, Representative of Regional Human Rights Mechanisms, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the African Committee on the Right and Welfare of the Child, I extend my deepest appreciation for the convening of this vital workshop on enhancing collaboration between regional and global human rights mechanisms. Implementing the 2022 workshop recommendations, our committee has proactively worked to institutionalize its relationship with the UN mechanism. A landmark achievement was the 2024 signing of MIU with the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child. This formalized partnership is already yielding results, such as the joint statement on the children in army conflict issued on the Day of African Child on the plea of children affected by army conflict and their right to education. We also have ensured that UN commits substantive participations in our session to extend working methods. Furthermore, our working group on the children with disability collaborates extensively with the UN independent expert on the enjoyment of human rights by persons with albinism. Through this partnership, the Day of General Discussion of Solutions for the Challenge of Children with Albinism was convened in April 2024 during the 43 ordinary session of the committee, with adoption of the outcome declarations. Recently, the committee adopted a guiding note on reporting on the rights of children with albinism, developed through the support of independent experts who also brought groups of persons with albinism in Africa in their consultations. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we have also had substantive actions with the UN Working Group on Discrimination Against Women and Girls, which submitted amicus curiae in case before us. Collaborations continue with the UN Special Representative of Violence Against Children to encourage states to uphold their pledge of ending violence against children. Regarding the last workshop theme, the committee has significantly increased its work on business and children's rights. We have fully operationalized a dedicated working group on children's rights and business, which finalized the study of children's rights and business, launched in collaboration with OHCHR on September of 2023. Moreover, the ECWC participates in standing meetings of the African Union and the United Nations Human Rights Framework, assuring our mandate is aligned with broader international efforts. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a persistent challenge remains the low visibility of Committee or special mechanisms. The committee has operationalized 11 special reporters and 4 working groups. In addition, a lack of dedicated budgetary resources often limits coordination and joint activity. I am convinced that our collaboration can be strengthened if we are intentional about collaboration and coordination, given the strengthened if we work together and approach our mandate. This year, we commemorate the 35th anniversary of the African Children's Charter. We plan to engage our sister regional mechanisms and UN partners to celebrate this milestone and reinforce our shared commitment. Excellency, we would like also to address that we face very critical challenges in this world, with many wars that ask for all human rights committees and special mechanisms to work together, putting the person in the first place. Most important, we must avoid the double standard treatment as happens today in many places in the world. Looking ahead, the potential of strengthening collaboration is immense. We can continue our effort to reinforce each other's decisions and recommendations with our respective mandate, as well to amplify our impact by cross-reference for better impact. I see a great opportunity for engagement between our special mechanism and the UN special procedures. I would like to stress on the need to include the committee special procedures in peer-to-peer discussions of mechanisms as well as forums to exchange. We can also foster our collaboration to work together with our works to set norms, standards, and thematic reports. For developing joint documents to contributing to each other document, we need to assure that our recommendations are aligned. Let us, this workshop, to commit to deeper and more intentional collaboration. I thank you, Excellency Chair.
Many thanks, Mr. Wilson Adele, for your detailed and comprehensive statement, which contains very pertinent information about the follow-up that was given by the African Committee on Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child to the recommendations of the workshop, which took place 3 years ago with the team of business and human rights and the role of regional organizations. And also thank you for your suggestions for further steps to enhance cooperation, especially with the UN, but also between regional mechanisms. Thank you for mentioning also the potential of strengthening cooperation with special procedures on specific thematic issues. Thank you so much again. And now I would like to introduce to you Honorable Lady Justice Anita Mugeni, the Vice President of the East African Court of Justice. She is also a senior advocate with over 25 years of experience in commercial and civil law litigation. In 2021, she was appointed judge of the East African Court of Justice, Appellate Division. She became Vice President of the court in June 2023. You have the floor, madam.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Distinguished guests, our protocol observed. We're going to talk about the East African Court of Justice and what was done since the workshop of 2022. The EHCHR has undertaken different activities to implement some recommendations. Since 2022, the East African Court of Justice has strengthened its cooperation with the UN and regional human rights organizations in terms of judicial cooperation and structured engagement. The EHCHR actively participated in BNL tripartite judicial dialogue along with ECOWAS and African Court of Human and People's Rights. This judicial dialogue was supported by UNDP and the Office of High Commission of Human Rights. This dialogue focused on sharing experience and strengthening cooperation. For capacity building, the ESC judges engaged in peer-to-peer learning programs in Luxembourg in 2023. This was to enhance the knowledge in international human rights jurisprudence and judicial best practices. In 2022, UNESCO organized separate trainings for ESCJ judges and journalists on international and regional standards relating to freedom of expression and access to information. There are also several activities in order to implement the recommendation that EHCJ carried out. That was to introduce digital case management, virtual hearings, mediation, and so on. There is also language and inclusion. The EHCJ worked on to incorporate Kiswahili and French. Normally, the working language in EHCJ is English, but we are working on incorporating Kiswahili and French in a working language to make justice more inclusive across the region. For the second question, or for the challenges we met, yes, the challenge remain, like when you try to work digitally, there are outdated management system, limited translations tools, and resource constraints, as I think all organizations are facing currently. But despite these challenges, EHCJ also demonstrated notable best practices. The COVID, there's also a good side of COVID, helped us to introduce what we called a hybrid hearings. So where judges are in court and all parties may stay in their home countries, but we can have virtual hearings. We also had third-party interventions and amicus curiae participations, live streaming of of public interest cases. We, in terms of progress, can say that the court has achieved significant digital transformation, transparency by improving the database and platform like Africanly, multilingual inclusivity, and is moving forward, enabling broader participation in the court. For the second question, I think looking ahead, there is a potential to further strengthen UN and EHCJ cooperation. Can say the structured framework formalizing cooperation through memorandum of understanding or annual action plans to guide the judicial collaboration. We can have capacity building, continuing because we already have some beneficiated some, partnering with UNDP, OHCHR, UNESCO, and other UN bodies to provide training for judges and staff in business of human rights, digital tools, and cross-border issues. Resource mobilization is also very, very crucial. And I think with finally, the best practice in UN cooperation have included support from UNDP, the Office of High Commission for Human Rights, MOU with UNESCO, joint capacity building programs, and use of UN support peer-to-peer running benchmarking visits on this. I think I can stop here, and I thank you so much.
I thank very much Honorable Lady Justice Anita Mugeni for her statement. It was interesting to hear the perspective of a regional court and the implementation of the recommendations of the previous global workshop from that perspective. Also interesting to hear about digital case management, the hybrid meetings, web streaming, and any such practices that would adapt the activities of court to the circumstances. Thank you once again. And now I would like to introduce Mr. Ousmane Diallo, Director of Research and Documentation of the ECOWAS Court of Justice. Mr. Diallo is the director of that unit, and he oversees legal research, case documentation, and the development of jurisprudential resources that support the court's mandate of ensuring justice and upholding human rights across West Africa. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, sir. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Good morning. On behalf of the Community Court of Justice, ECOWAS, I have the honor to take part into this high-level meeting to deliver what the ECOWAS Court has been able to do since the last workshop in 2022. Actually, as our sister regional court, I would start by saying that we are deeply engaged in regional cooperation, and we have received a team coming from the African Court of Human and People's Rights, a study visit that we will also be happy to reciprocate. And in our rules, the ECOWAS Court has engaged in tax reforms, because in our rules, there was a debate over the ability of businesses to come before the court for cases relating to economic rights concerning businesses. So the court has firmly, in its 2024 practice directions and the instruction to the chief registrar, made it clear that the provision in Article 10D of the protocol on the court actually means that individuals, means that both a juristic and legal person can come, including businesses and also NGOs. The court has also embarked in some of the reforms concerning access to the court, because the protection of the rights by the court, is conditional by the cases that come before the court. So the court has tried to deepen, facilitate access to the court by allowing amicus curiae brief. You know that concerning, for example, the right to environment, the protection of the environment, NGOs play a critical role, and they can really enlighten the courts. So the court has also in its text clearly allowed a brief by amicus curiae. The court has also taken note of the fact that the participation of the civil society organization in our region is not as developed as it is in other regions. And sometimes it is individual public spirit people that would be interested in bringing a case before the court, but cases that interest a whole community. So for that also the court has really facilitated public interest litigation introduced by NGOs and also individual. And the court is also engaged in, since last year, in organizing a moot court competition in order to contribute to the legal education within the region and also help raise awareness about the court. The challenges remained. Like our sister institution, the East African Court of Justice, we also, since COVID, we have been trying to introduce an electronic case management system. And I'm happy to say that it is now fully operational. And last year, the court embarked in a training for lawyers in our sub-region, and we were able to do that for Francophone countries in Lomé, Togo, and for Anglophone countries in Accra, Ghana, and for Lusophone countries, we organized the training in Praia, Cape Verde. The ECOWAS Court remains firmly committed to working with the United Nations system and member state and other stakeholders, regional mechanism to ensure that business and human rights really are protected in such a way that we do not just focus on the international responsibilities of member states, but ensure that whatever the size of an organization, a business, they can be also held responsible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Diallo, for giving us such a focused statement on how the ECOWAS court has implemented the recommendations of the previous workshop, as well as the new developments in general, including the electronic case management system, the interaction, cooperation with non-governmental organizations, and their role in the process. Thank you so much. Now we have about 20 minutes for a question and answer session, for an open discussion. Before starting, I just wanted to point out that the resolution that I mentioned in the beginning, resolution of the Human Rights Council 52/15, has mandated this workshop and also has called for participation of relevant experts from international, regional, sub-regional, inter-regional human rights organizations, as well as member states, observers, national human rights institutions, and non-governmental organizations. End of quote. I'm very happy to see all these groups and representatives here present in the room. Having said that, without further ado, I would like to open the floor for comments, statements. I understand that the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons, especially women and children, has asked for to make a statement from the floor. You have the floor, Mrs. Mulali.
Thank you very much, Chair, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to speak briefly. Siobhan Mulali, UN Special Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons, especially women and children. And I just wanted to highlight the initiative of the recently launched platform of independent experts on the rights of refugees, PEER, of which I am currently chair. The platform brings together United Nations special procedures, treaty bodies, and the regional independent human rights mechanisms to focus specifically on the rights of refugees and to strengthen our coordination and advocacy efforts to achieve better impact, specifically in relation to bringing highlighting how international human rights law and international refugee law work together to secure the right to seek and enjoy asylum and to protect the rights of refugees. Currently, the platform is comprised of the mandate of Special Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons, Special Rapporteur on Rights of Migrants, the Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, from the Special Procedures, and from the treaty bodies, the UN Committee Against Torture. And from the regional bodies, it includes the Inter-American Commissioner on Human Mobility, Commissioner Pochak, the African Commissioner on the Rights of Asylum Seekers, Refugees, Internally Displaced Persons and Migrants, Commissioner Sassi, and from the Council of Europe, the Committee on the Prevention of Torture. We have also initiated structured dialogue and consultations with the Asia-Pacific region, which doesn't have an independent human rights body as such, but we are working to ensure a regular dialogue and consultation. The platform was launched at the Global Refugee Forum in December 2023, also with a statement made on Human Rights Day. And since then, we have held consultations with civil society and refugee-led organisations to identify the most pressing thematic priorities and issues. Those have been identified as access to asylum, including issues relating to externalization of refugee status determination, transfers to third countries, protections against refoulement and forced returns, detention and increasing use of detention and risks of arbitrary detention, the rights of refugee and asylum seeking children, and the impact of climate change on the rights of refugees, as well as statelessness as a key concern, and sustainable livelihoods for refugees. And that was very much a contribution from civil society and refugee-led organisations that we would work to link together humanitarian action and human rights action. In terms of the activities to date, we have undertaken training and capacity building with the International Association of Refugee and Migration Judges at the African chapter meeting last year, which was held in Egypt. We will be hosting training and capacity building at the World Conference of the International Association of Refugee and Migration Judges, which will be held in Kenya in November. We've also undertaken a visit to reception facilities for Sudanese refugees in Cairo, a recent visit to the Council of Europe, mechanisms working on migration and refugees. We've held a side event and also contributed to a panel at the public sessions of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, and engaged in meetings and consultations with the Asian Pacific human rights bodies and with civil society. We have a website, a dedicated website, which brings together the work of the various entities of the platform, PIE.org. And we have, over the last 18 months, issued a number of thematic statements addressing issues such as due process in asylum determination and rights of refugees, externalization and transfers to third countries, the gender dimensions of refugee protection, and protecting the right to seek and enjoy asylum from persecution. The purpose of the platform is not to duplicate activities that are already ongoing within individual mandates and regional entities, but to really work together to strengthen our coordination and advocacy and impact so as to protect the rights of refugees, in particular lending the voice of UN bodies to the work of regional entities and bringing the work and expertise of the regional entities to the work of UN special procedures and treaty bodies. There have also been briefings to treaty bodies specifically on developments in relation to refugee and international human rights law and how those can work together, and we will continue to do that over the coming years. We are also hoping to launch a Friends of the platform, bringing together member states, and had a meeting this morning already to discuss how to strengthen and develop a political will to support the work of the platform and our coordination and advocacy activities. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Special Rapporteur Mullally. I just wanted to add that in addition to the very, very important function of Ms. Mullally as a Special Rapporteur on trafficking, she's also chairperson of the Platform of Independent Experts of Refugee Rights, which was launched in December 2023 during the Global Refugee Forum, as she mentioned, to better coordinate joint activities to enhance the protection and promotion of human rights of refugees and asylum seekers. Thank you. Are there any other statements, comments, suggestions from the floor? I don't see any. I would like to thus thank warmly the distinguished members of panel 1, and would like to ask the members of panel 2 to join the podium. Thank you very much. Good morning. Let's see.
No, here, check.
We have some minutes. We have some minutes.
We don't really have an official break between the panels. Maybe after panel 3, we're going to have a break. Let's see. We don't see the names from this side.
Yeah,
so, if you can help us.
Mr. Alsi, Mr. Bordeaux.
So we are looking for Milagros. So Milagros is there, yes. Morning. Okay.
Mr. Bordeaux.
Matthias, we have a break after the third panel, right?
To the third, yeah.
Third.
So after this one, there's a new moderator and a new panel.
Yes. Okay.
And then after that,
I thank the members of the second panel for coming and joining the podium. Just wanted to remind participants that we have changing the panels without the break in the first and second panel, and the break is going to take place after the third panel. So I would like to proceed with the second panel. We have distinguished representatives from the different geographic regions: Middle East and North Africa, Asia, and the Americas. I just want to remind participants that we have about 35-40 minutes for statements from the panel, with time allocation of 5 minutes per panelist. And then, as per the existing practice, we're going to have about half an hour, 25 minutes, half an hour of open discussion with the participants from the floor and the panel. Without further ado, I would like to introduce His Excellency Talal Al-Mutayiri, the chairperson of the Permanent Arab Human Rights Committee of the League of Arab States. Ambassador Al-Mutayiri is the chairperson of the committee since 2022. He was also previously the chairperson of the Independent Permanent Human Rights Commission of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. Mr. Al-Mutayiri was also had numerous diplomatic positions in Kuwait, most recently as Assistant Minister for Human Rights Affairs in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He has also served as a member of several human rights committees in his home country of Kuwait, and I would like to give you the floor, please.
Thank you, Excellency. سيدات والسادة أصحاب السعادة الحضور الكريم، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يشرفني أن أتوجه إليكم اليوم بهذه الكلمة باسم اللجنة العربية الدائمة لحقوق الإنسان، في وقت يشهد فيه عالمنا العربي تحديات جسيمة على مختلف الأصعدة، سياسية واقتصادية واجتماعية، تتقاطع جميعها مع مسألة محورية لا يمكن تجاهلها، وهي حماية وتعزيز حقوق الإنسان في العالم العربي. أن منطقتنا كغيرها من مناطق العالم تواجه تحديات متعددة ومركبة، سياسية وأمنية وتنموية، ومع ذلك فإن التزام الدول العربية بمبادئ حقوق الإنسان راسخ، ويستند إلى قناعة بأن التنمية المستدامة لا تنفصل عن احترام كرامة الإنسان وحقوقه الأساسية. لقد أدركت جامعة الدول العربية منذ وقت مبكر أهمية وضع آليات عربية تعني بحقوق الإنسان، تأكيدا على التزام الدول العربية بالمبادئ التي أرستها المواثيق الدولية والاتفاقيات الإقليمية، وفي مقدمتها الميثاق العربي لحقوق الإنسان الذي اعتمد في عام 2004 كخطوة مهمة في بناء منظومة عربية ذات خصوصية ثقافية وقانونية تنبع من واقعنا وتستجيب لتطلعات شعوب المنطقة العربية. يسعدني ويشرفني أشارككم اليوم باسم اللجنة العربية الدائمة كأحدى الآليات التابعة لجامعة الدول العربية في هذا اللقاء الدولي الهام الذي يجسد روح التعاون والتشاور بين مختلف الآليات الإقليمية المعنية بحقوق الإنسان. ومن هذا المنطلق تأتي مشاركتنا معكم اليوم في هذه الورشة الهامة التي تركز على موضوع بالغ الأهمية، وهو الحق في بيئة نظيفة وصحية ومستدامة، وهو موضوع يرتبط ارتباطا وثيقا بكافة حقوق الإنسان، فهو ليس مجرد قضية بيئية، بل هو قضية حياة وكرامة الإنسان وحمايته. نلتقي اليوم وعقدنا العزم على ترسيخ ثوابت طبيعية وأساسية لمجتمعاتنا، وهذا الواجب علينا مضاعفة الجهود لحمايتها وتعزيزها، وذلك في إطار منظومة حقوق الإنسان على المستوى الإقليمي والدولي، والتي ترسخ أسمى معاني القيم الإنسانية النبيلة. وقد أولت اللجنة العربية الدائمة التي أنشئت عام 1968 وتعد جهاز جامعة الدول العربية المختص في مواضيع حقوق الإنسان في الوطن العربي، وهي من أقدم اللجان الإقليمية المعنية بحقوق الإنسان، وقد أولت خلال اجتماعاتها المتتالية موضوع الحق في بيئة صحية وسليمة ومستدامة أهمية كبرى عبر إدراجه ضمن جدول أعمال اجتماعاتها. وقد اختارت اللجنة الدائمة شعار الحق في بيئة صحية وسليمة ومستدامة شعارا لإحياء اليوم العربي لحقوق الإنسان عام 2022، أن الحق في بيئة نظيفة وصحية ومستدامة كما هو موضح في العديد من الاتفاقيات والمعاهدات الدولية حق لا يمكن تجربته في هذا السياق. يتعين على الدول أن تقوم بدورها في ضمان احترام الحق من خلال تبني سياسات بيئية فعالة وتعزيز تشريعات تحمي البيئة، والعمل على تحقيق التنسيق بين الآليات الإقليمية والدولية لتحقيق هذا الهدف المشترك. سيدات والسادة، أن المنطقة العربية كما تعلمون جميعا تواجه تحديات بيئية جسيمة، مما يهدد ليس فقط البيئة بل أيضا حياة ملايين الأشخاص في المنطقة. ومن هنا تبرز أهمية العمل المشترك بين الدول العربية والمنظمات الإقليمية والدولية والقطاع الخاص والمجتمع المدني لتوفير بيئة أمنية آمنة وصحية ومستدامة لجميع الأفراد. وأود أن أشير في هذا الصدد إلى حالة فريدة في عالمنا العربي، حيث يواجه أشقائنا في فلسطين معاناة في الوصول إلى الحق في بيئة سليمة ومياه صالحة للشرب. فنتمنى أن يكون هناك يعني تسليطا للضوء حول هذه الأوضاع التي يعيشها أبناء فلسطين، كما وردت هناك تقارير عديدة للمنظمات الدولية تشير إلى هذه وجود قصور في وصول حقوق الأفراد الفلسطينيين إلى هذه الحق المكتسب وفق الآليات والمواثيق الدولية. وفي هذا السياق من المهم التشديد على أن الحق في بيئة صحية وسليمة ومستدامة يعد ترسيخا للحق في الحياة، أسمى حقوق الإنسان، وتعزيز الحق في الصحة في سياق ظرفية وبيئية عالمية ضاغطة، ومعطى رئيسي لتوفير مستوى معيشي لائق، وضرورة حتمية وملحة يتوجب على أجيال الحاضر ومراعاتها وصونها. من أكبر التحديات التي يستوجب علينا مواجهتها التغير المناخي الذي يحول دون تنفيذ كل صور حقوق الإنسان، في هذا ما يستدعي تعزيز التضامن والتعاون الإقليمي والدولي في هذا الشأن، وأهمية أن يكون هناك تبادل المعلومات والخبرات وأفضل الممارسات، وإلى أهمية قصوى لبناء القدرات بين كافة الدول والمنظمات والآليات الإقليمية. نتمنى أصحاب السعادة والحضور الكريم أن تكون لهذه الورشة دورا في تبادل الخبرات والممارسات الفضلة وتعزيز التعاون بين الآليات الدولية والإقليمية في مجال حقوق الإنسان والبيئة، والعمل على تطوير هذه الآليات حتى تكون فاعلة. شكرا لكم.
Many thanks to Mr. Al-Mutayeri. And I would like to give the floor to Honorable Ms. Mohammed Al-Sheikhi, Chairperson of the Arab Charter Committee on Human Rights. Mr. Al-Sheikhi leads the efforts to promote and protect human rights across the Arab region, guiding the implementation of human rights standards and fostering collaboration among member states to strengthen legal and institutional frameworks. You have the floor, sir.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. أصحاب المعالي والسعادة، السيدات والسادة، يسعدني ويشرفني أن أخاطبكم اليوم باسم لجنة الميثاق العربي لحقوق الإنسان في هذا اللقاء العالمي الذي يجمعنا تحت سقف الأمم المتحدة لمناقشة واحد من أعظم التحديات التي تواجه الإنسانية، ضمان الحق في بيئة نظيفة وصحية ومستدامة. أن انعقاد هذا الاجتماع في مدينة جنيف العاصمة العالمية لحقوق الإنسان وفي قصر الأمم تحديدا ليس مجرد صدفة جغرافية، بل هو تعبير رمزي عن الحاجة الملحة لتعزيز الشراكة بين الآليات الأممية والإقليمية والوطنية في مواجهة أزمة بيئية عالمية تمس جوهر الكرامة الإنسانية وتختبر قدراتنا الجماعية على التضامن والعمل المشترك. لقد كان الميثاق العربي لحقوق الإنسان منذ دخوله حيز النفاذ في العام 2008 من أوائل الصكوك الحقوقية الإقليمية الملزمة التي نص صراحة على الحق في بيئة سليمة في مادته 38، ولم يكتفي الميثاق بالإقرار بهذا الحق كقيمة مستقلة، بل ربطه بمجموعة من الحقوق الاقتصادية والاجتماعية والأخرى، الحق في مستوى معيشي لائق، الحق في الغذاء، والحق في الصحة. وهذا الترابط يعبر عن رؤية شاملة لحقوق الإنسان تقوم على عدم التجزئة والتكامل، وهو ما كرسته ديباجة الميثاق في المادة الأولى. وقد جسد هذا التوجه في مناسبات عديدة، منها اختيار شعار اليوم العربي لحقوق الإنسان في العام 2022: الحق في بيئة سليمة مع تحديات التغير المناخي، بما يعكس وعيا متناميا داخل المنطقة العربية بخطورة التدهور البيئي وأثره المباشر على منظومة الحقوق والحريات. استنادا إلى ورقة المفاهيم الصادرة عن المفوضية السامية لحقوق الإنسان، فإن هذا الاجتماع يتمحور حول 6 مواضيع رئيسية، ويسعدني أن أضع أمامكم رؤية لجنة الميثاق العربي لحقوق الإنسان إزاء هذه القضايا. أننا في اللجنة نثمن ما تحقق في السنوات الماضية، ولكن ندعو إلى إنشاء منصة مشتركة دائمة بين الآليات الإقليمية ومكتب المفوض السامي لتبادل الخبرات وأفضل الممارسات بشأن إدماج البعد البيئي في مراجعة تقارير الدول، ولتطوير مؤشرات قياس موحدة لمدى التقدم في حماية الحق في بيئة صحية، وللنهوض بالحق في بيئة نظيفة وصحية. وعلى الرغم من وضوح الإطار المعياري، لأنه تظل فجوات التنفيذ قائمة، ومن هنا تحث اللجنة دول الأطراف إلى سن تشريعات وطنية تحدد مكونات هذا الحق وتضع آليات للمساءلة، وعلى إجراء تقييمات للأثر البيئي في المشاريع التنموية الكبرى، بما يضمن مشاركة مجتمعية حقيقية. أما فيما يتعلق بالمساءلة والانتصاف من الأضرار البيئية، أن الميثاق يتيح للجنة دور رقابي عبر فحص تقارير الدول وإصدار توصيات غير أن هذا الدور يمكن تعزيزه بتعاون أوثق مع الشبكة العربية للمؤسسات الوطنية لحقوق الإنسان لجمع معلومات أوفى عن التحديات التي تواجه الأفراد بالوصول للعدالة. إن المادة 32 من الميثاق تكفل حق الإعلام حرية التعبير، وهو الأساس لضمان الوصول إلى المعلومات. وتؤكد اللجنة أن حماية المدافعين عن حقوق الإنسان البيئية ليست قضية ثانوية، بل هي جزء لا يتجزأ من حماية الفضاء المدني وضمان المشاركة الواسعة. كذلك مسألة الانتقال العادل إلى مجتمعات مستدامة، ترى اللجنة أن الانتقال إلى الاقتصاد الأخضر لابد أن يستند إلى نهج قائم على حقوق الإنسان يضمن عدم ترك أحد خلف الركب، مع إيلاء اهتمام خاص للفئات الهشة والمناطق الأكثر تأثرا بالتغيير المناخي، وربط ذلك الحق في التنمية بمادته 37 في الحق في بيئة سليمة. توصيات للمضي قدما، توصي اللجنة بتطوير تعليقات عامة ومبادئ توجيهية للدول الأطراف بشأن الحق في بيئة سليمة وبناء القدرات من خلال ورش عمل إقليمية مشتركة، إلى جانب ترجمة ونشر تقارير المقررين الخاصين إلى اللغة العربية لتوسيع دائرة الوعي. إننا نلتقي اليوم استنادا للقرار مجلس حقوق الإنسان رقم 15/52 لسنة 2023 الذي طلب من المفوضية السامية تنظيم هذه الورشة في العام 2025. هذا القرار لم يكن مجرد إجراء إجرائي، بل تأكيدا على أن التعاون بين المنظمات الإقليمية والأمم المتحدة ركن أساسي لتجديد التوافق العالمي حول حقوق الإنسان، كما أكدته أيضا الذكرى 75 للإعلان العالمي لحقوق الإنسان والذكرى 30 لإعلان برنامج عمل فيينا. ولذلك فإن لجنة الميثاق العربي ترى أن هذا التعاون يجب أن يتخذ أشكالا أكثر مؤسسية، مثال اجتماعات دورية بين اللجان الإقليمية ونظرائها العموميين، آليات لتبادل البيانات والممارسات الفضلى في قضايا البيئة والحقوق الاقتصادية والاجتماعية، تعزيز برامج الزمالة والتدريب المتبادل للموظفين الآليات الإقليمية والأممية. سيدات والسادة، إن الأزمة البيئية ليست أزمة تقنية فقط، بل هي أزمة إنسانية بامتياز. فالتغيير المناخي يفاقم هشاشة المجتمعات ويزيد في اتساع فجوة الفقر ويقوض أسس الأمن الدولي. لذلك أن مقاربة اللجنة تنطلق من قناعة راسخة بأن الحق في بيئة سليمة هو شرط مسبق للتمتع ببقية الحقوق، والعدالة البيئية لا تنفصل عن العدالة الاجتماعية والتنموية، والمشاركة الشعبية وحماية المدافعين وتكافؤ الفرص والتنمية كلها عناصر ضرورية لضمان الانتقال. لجنة الميثاق العربي تطلع إلى المستقبل وتشارك في هذه الورشة، وتؤكد التزامها بأن تكون شريكا فاعلا للمنظومة الحقوقية الدولية، فهي تدرك أن التحديات البيئية عابرة لا يمكن مواجهتها إلا بتعزيز جسور التعامل. ختاما، رسالتنا اليوم واضحة: البيئة ليست ترفا، بل هي حق إنساني أصيل، والمستقبل الذي نطمح إليه أن يكون ممكنا إلى بيئة سليمة تحفظ حياة الإنسان وكرامته وتفتح آفاق للتنمية العادلة والمستدامة. شكرا لكم، السلام عليكم.
In order to ensure life and dignity for all and ensure additional license for equitable and sustainable development. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Al-Shehi, and after the chairpersons of the two Arab regional organizations, I would like to introduce the chairpersons of two regional organizations, mechanisms from the Southeast Asian region. First, I would like to introduce Mr. Bontai Soon, who is the current chairperson of the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights. Mr. Taisun is also representative of Malaysia on that commission since 2022. He is a lawyer with over 28 years of experience in the practice of law at the international and national level. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Excellencies, colleagues. Thank you for extending the invitation to the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, OHCHR, for this workshop. As the ASEAN Chair, Malaysia chairs the Commission this year, and I'm pleased to share some thoughts on the topic at hand. Regional human rights mechanisms bring human rights from the global to the local, while at the same time contribute to the realization of human rights through region-focused instruments. The basic text of each regional system can be read to reaffirm universal norms, but the direction of travel is no longer only top-down, from UN treaty bodies to states. Increasingly, we see a bottom-up dynamic, regional bodies interpreting regional instruments in ways that enrich and advance international human rights standards. This dynamism has put regional systems at the forefront of norm development. Regional systems also provide a crucial layer of protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms alongside domestic laws and institutions. The OHCHR has engaged with and received support from different UN agencies and programs, IOM, UNDP, UNICEF, ESCAP, OHCHR in the past 3 years. Together, we have worked on very practical issues, referral systems for survivors of gender-based violence and victims of trafficking in persons within ASEAN, ensuring decent work for migrant fishers, preventing torture, safeguarding the right of freedom of peaceful assembly, advancing the rights of the child, and promoting the rights of development, peace, and education. We have also deepened cooperation on environmental rights and responsible business conduct in the context of migration. A milestone in this cooperation was the first OHCHR UN Dialogue on Human Rights, held in Geneva from 27 to 29 September 2023. That dialogue marked significant progress in strengthening ASEAN-UN cooperation. It improved mutual understanding of mandates, working methods, and challenges across our respective mechanisms. It identified concrete areas for joint work and explored ways to establish a standing channel of communication between OHCHR and UN human rights mechanisms. Building on that success, preparations are underway for the second dialogue this year. The engagements with the UN human rights treaty bodies and special procedures have also been intensified. Special rapporteurs with different thematic mandate holders have participated in regional human rights dialogues and consultations that OHCHR has organized and facilitated. On 11 June 2025, OHCHR had responded to a joint communication from 4 special procedure mandate holders concerning the proposed ASEAN Declaration on the right to a safe, clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. OHCHR welcomes and encourages engagement with regional human rights mechanisms and the special procedures mandate holders, considering and emphasizing that such engagements are aimed at fostering mutual understanding and voluntary exchange. These experiences reinforce a central point that the normative leadership of the UN human rights system through OHCHR, the treaty bodies, and the special procedures remain indispensable. But ASEAN and other regional bodies are not passive recipients. We are active partners in interpreting, operationalizing, and where appropriate, innovating on human rights norms so they deliver tangible improvements on the ground. OHCHR also appreciates the OHCHR Fellowship Program on building capacity for secretariats of regional human rights mechanisms, which enabled OHCHR to send its staff in 2022 and 2023. We look forward to strengthening cooperation and benefiting from the wealth of substantive expertise and knowledge, such as the database managed by OHCHR on the Universal Human Rights Index, publications and online resources, thematic reports, and recommendations from the UN human rights system. Finally, allow me to offer 2 recommendations aimed at making our collective efforts more credible and practical. First, we encourage the UN human rights system through OHCHR to maintain systematic, comprehensive engagement with all regional human rights mechanisms. Regular structured exchanges rather than ad hoc interactions can sharpen recommendations, ensure they are grounded in regional context, and support member states in meeting their international obligations and commitments. Second, we encourage initiatives that strengthen the capacity of regional mechanisms and processes to share good practices and cooperate on transnational and transboundary human rights challenges. Many of our most pressing issues, migration, climate impacts, digital rights, corporate accountability, do not stop at national borders. Cross-regional learning, joint training, and referral and data sharing frameworks can accelerate real-world improvements. Let me underline and underscore the importance of enhanced coordination for effective information sharing and consultation across mechanisms and at all levels, and a closer coordination with the UN human rights systems on these matters, including standard setting, reporting, and monitoring, can reduce duplication, clarify expectations, and most importantly, close the gap between principle and practice. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Bontai Soon, for your contribution. And now I give the floor to Mrs. Van Moot Zain, Chairperson of the ASEAN Commission on the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Women and Children. Mrs. Moot Zain she has played a pivotal role in advancing gender equality, safeguarding children's rights, and promoting inclusive policies across ASEAN member states. You have the floor, Madam.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the ASEAN Commissions on the Promotions and the Right of Women and Children, or ACWC, I am pleased to share information on ASEAN regional efforts on promoting the rights of women and children to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. Next slide. Let me highlight that ASEAN recognizes that women and children across the region have higher risks and multiple vulnerabilities in many dimensions and continue to face persistent and emerging challenges, including the gendered impact of climate change. ACWC is mindful of these compounded issues and challenges, which increase vulnerability and inequalities and have long-term impact on rights and development of women and children, if not addressed. ASEAN leverage regional cooperations to realize safer societies and shaping a better future for all women and children. Next slide. ASEAN's high political commitments in upholding the rights of all peoples of ASEAN is fully articulated in the Kuala Lumpur Declarations on ASEAN 2045, our shared future, which was adopted by the ASEAN leaders during the 46th ASEAN Summit. The declarations adopted the ASEAN Community Vision 2045, resilient, innovative, dynamic, and people-centered ASEAN, and its strategic plans across ASEAN community pillars, which embodied strategic goals and measures to building an equal, inclusive, and safe societies. ASEAN efforts in upholding the rights of all women and children is guided by international conventions that all 10 ASEAN member states have ratified, namely the UN Conventions on the Rights of Child, CRC, the Rights on the Eliminations of all forms of discriminations against women, CEDAW, and the Conventions on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, CRPD. These commitments are consistent with the Sustainable Development Goals, including under Goals 5, 13, and Goal 16, among others. Next slide. The ACWC has established itself as a highly specialized and credible ASEAN body with expertise on promoting and protecting the rights of women and children, composed of representatives for women's rights and children's rights coming from the governments, CSOs, academia, as appointed by the ASEAN member states, serving on a voluntary and a part-time basis with a term of 3 years. The ACWC regional cooperations is guided by ACWC 5 years work plan currently under the ACWC work plan 2021 to 2025. Next slide. ASEAN is strongly committed to evidence-based policy and programs development. ACWC has worked with the ASEAN Committee on Women, ACW, and developing key ASEAN reports that present crucial gender data and evidence. The State of Gender Equality and Climate Change in ASEAN report articulates the intrinsic linkage between addressing gender inequalities and adapting to and mitigating the impact of climate change. It provides an analytical assessment from a gender perspective, a potential opportunities for actions in agriculture, renewable energy, and disaster risk reduction. The ASEAN Gender Outlook in 2024 significantly informs regional cooperations on the promotions of the rights of women and children. While the report revealed ASEAN's tremendous strides towards several SDGs, decreasing poverty, food insecurity, school abandonment, violent crime, and the use of uncle fuels. It also showcased how climate change and environmental degradations are still substantially affecting women and girls. Given the intensified consequences of climate change, more efforts are needed to address this impact. Next slide. ASEAN also has placed high political commitment in promoting and protecting children's rights. These efforts are evident in several frameworks that guarantee children's access to their rights and opportunities to develop and harness their potential and abilities. These include ASEAN commitments to respecting human rights, eliminating all forms of violence against women and violence against children, including combating trafficking in person, ending worst forms of child labor, as well as strengthening social protections. Next slide, please. Ladies and gentlemen, ASEAN fully recognizes how gender equality intersect with other issues such as disaster risk management and climate action in the region, and how crucial it is to ensure women's voice, agency, and participation in addressing those issues through the ASEAN declarations and gender responsive implementations of the ASEAN Community Vision 2025 and ASEAN Gender Mainstreaming Strategic Framework. To translate commitment into action, ASEAN is mainstreaming gender perspective in the work of sectoral body across the 3 ASEAN community pillars: ASEAN Political Security Community, ASEAN Economic Community, and the ASEAN Social Cultural Community. Next slide. In closing, let me highlight that ACWC is currently developing its 5 years work plan, which will cover the period 2026 to 2030. Some of the emerging challenges and priorities that ACWC aims to address include the existential impact of climate change on the lives of children and those in the context of disasters and other crisis and emergency situations. We are also strengthening our efforts to promote digital rights of women and children, including protections from tech-driven gender-based violence and bullying, as well as clearly articulate the intersectionality of violence against women and violence against children. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this event, and I hope that you find my presentation useful. Thank you.
Many thanks, Madam Van Mortzijn. And now we are going over to the Americas region, and I would like to introduce Mr. Javier Palomo Lantes, who is the Special Rapporteur on Economic, Social, Cultural, and Environmental Rights at the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. He's also a member of the United Nations Human Rights Council Advisory Committee, appointed this year. You have the floor.
Excellencies, Distinguished Chair, colleagues, good morning. It's an honor to join this panel in my capacity as a special rapporteur on economic, social, cultural, and environmental rights. The American Commission on Human Rights. I will deliver my remarks in Spanish. Primero quiero aclarar que creo que soy miembro del comité asesor del Consejo de Derechos Humanos hasta mañana. Estoy finalizando el mandato. Mañana no podré entrar con esto macho. Gracias a la organización y quiero extender mis saludos a quienes me acompañan como panelistas, Estados miembros, organizaciones de la sociedad civil. Es un honor participar de este panel sobre la cooperación entre las Naciones Unidas y los mecanismos regionales. Me parece especialmente pertinente un panel para abordar el vínculo entre Naciones Unidas y los mecanismos regionales en un momento de crisis del multilateralismo global, también regional, lo que hace aún más urgente fortalecer puentes entre las Naciones Unidas y los sistemas regionales de derechos humanos. Tanto Naciones Unidas como sistemas regionales enfrentamos el desafío de hacer más, porque la demanda cada vez más intensa, profusa, con menos recursos o con recursos limitados, en un contexto de crisis climática, de desigualdad, también de retrocesos desde la perspectiva de las instituciones democráticas. La cuestión central no es solo gestionar la escasez, sino demostrar que los estándares, en mi caso los estándares interamericanos, se pueden traducir en impactos reales teniendo a las víctimas en el centro, logrando prevenir daños, orientar políticas públicas y fortalecer la participación social. En este contexto, la Relatoría sobre Derechos Económicos, Sociales, Culturales y Ambientales de la Comisión Interamericana de Derechos Humanos promueve desde esta posición y como parte de la Comisión, en el marco de una actividad que se desarrolla por la Comisión como un todo, varias áreas de colaboración que considero que deben ser continuadas y profundizadas. Creo que debemos profundizar la articulación entre los estándares globales y los regionales. Por ejemplo, incorporando los avances que han ocurrido en estos últimos años, producto de opiniones consultivas del Tribunal del Mar, de la Corte Internacional de Justicia y de la Corte Interamericana de Derechos Humanos, los debates y resoluciones de Naciones Unidas sobre ambiente y clima. Esto debe reforzar una interpretación común de los derechos y especialmente del derecho a un ambiente sano, a un clima sano. También creo que es fundamental continuar realizando acciones conjuntas, declaraciones. Esta relatoría tiene la oportunidad de hacer declaraciones conjuntas con relatorías especiales de Naciones Unidas, cambio climático, derecho al ambiente sano, asociación y asamblea, entre otros. La Comisión Interamericana de Derechos Humanos en su conjunto tiene una práctica orientada a realizar este tipo de actividades. Consultas regionales con otros procedimientos especiales. De la Redesca, como relator especial, he realizado consultas de este tipo, con relatorías como la del cambio climático, sustancias tóxicas. Este tipo de acciones son acciones que creo que se tienen que profundizar. También un aspecto que es fundamental desde mi perspectiva ha sido la colaboración en el marco de visitas de trabajo que dan lugar a informes relatorios de la Comisión y de la Redesca. Fue mencionada en la apertura de este evento el informe sobre las inundaciones al Río Grande do Sul, en Brasil, informe de mi oficina que contó con la colaboración de equipo del alto comisionado de las Naciones Unidas para los Derechos Humanos. Lo mismo ha ocurrido en el informe sobre los impactos de los derechos humanos y la biodiversidad de los incendios ocurridos el año pasado en Bolivia. Ese informe también ha sido publicado y en el marco de la visita de trabajo contamos con el apoyo y la participación de funcionarios y funcionarias de la Oficina del Alto Comisionado para los Derechos Humanos de las Naciones Unidas. No quiero extenderme mucho más. Existe una práctica de la Comisión Interamericana de trabajar junto con Naciones Unidas. Es usual que las audiencias de la Comisión Interamericana haya un lugar para que participen funcionarios y funcionarias de Naciones Unidas. Es bastante usual, como ha ocurrido hace algunos meses en relación a la situación en Venezuela, que delegaciones de la Comisión Interamericana de Derechos Humanos participen en sesiones del Consejo. Ese flujo de información me parece algo esencial. Quiero cerrar solo con una breve reflexión sobre los tiempos en los que vivimos, tiempos en relación al derecho al ambiente sano tan particulares, donde festejamos la existencia de nuevas opiniones consultivas que avanzan en estándares muy relevantes, jurisprudencia muy relevantes para el derecho internacional de los derechos humanos, pero que conviven, y lo hemos observado en nuestra labor de monitoreo, con profusos retrocesos en protección ambiental en muchos de los países. Esta brecha entre el avance de la normativa del derecho internacional de los derechos humanos y los desafíos que enfrentan los países y las realidades nacionales, creo que tiene que estar en el centro de nuestras miradas. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Muchas gracias, señor Paluma. Thank you very much, especially for your contribution and your last comment about the gap that you mentioned and the need for all of us to think how to connect and fulfill that gap. I now would like to introduce Madam Milagros Mucios. Mrs. Mucios is a Peruvian lawyer, currently serving as legal advisor and chief of staff to the presidency of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. You have the floor, madam.
Thank you very much. Buenos días. It is an honor to address you today on behalf of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights at this crucial gathering, and especially in this panel, dedicated to strengthening cooperation between United Nations and regional human rights organizations. So I will divide my presentation in 4 key aspects: the development, challenges, the Inter-American contributions, and what we look ahead. And I will do this in Spanish since it's the main language of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. Considerando los desarrollos desde el 2022, Teniendo en cuenta la resolución 5342, es posible determinar 4 puntos importantes desarrollados por la Corte Interamericana. El primero de ellos, la resiliencia durante los tiempos de pandemia y lo que vimos después. Luego de COVID-19, la Corte Interamericana desarrolló diversos mecanismos para permitir la participación de las personas en la Corte a través de audiencias de forma virtual y presenciales. Si bien esto inició como consecuencia de la pandemia, se mantiene la fecha y permite el acercamiento de víctimas y el acercamiento de organizaciones internacionales y demás participantes dentro del sistema interamericano en una forma híbrida, tanto presencial como virtual, que se mantiene la fecha. De hecho, esta semana la Corte Interamericana ha celebrado sesiones fuera de su sede en Paraguay, en presenciales, y esta semana se mantienen de forma virtual. El segundo punto es profundizar el relacionamiento con las entidades de Naciones Unidas. Desde el 2022, la Corte Interamericana ha desarrollado actividades importantes para mantener este diálogo con los miembros de las Naciones Unidas. Hemos coorganizado foros, coorganizado visitas. Por ejemplo, el año pasado se estableció un foro a través de Zoom, donde tuvimos la participación de diferentes relatorías, lo que permite justamente poder mantener un diálogo entre los derechos humanos y los estándares que los diferentes organismos de las regiones ejecutan, tomando en cuenta también las limitaciones presupuestales y abriéndonos a plataformas digitales. Eso se ve también en los foros que realiza la Corte Interamericana con la Comisión Interamericana en diferentes temas, no solo vinculados al medio ambiente, pero también democracia, Estado de Derecho y la inteligencia artificial. Tenemos jurisprudencia como tercer punto, en el que la Corte Interamericana ha hecho uso de los informes de las Naciones Unidas, por ejemplo, en el caso Lauroya versus Perú, que ya se comentaba en el 2022, que fue notificado durante el 2024 y trata sobre un caso de contaminación ambiental que trasciende la región al considerar los efectos de la contaminación y hace uso específico de reportes de Naciones Unidas sobre sustancias químicas peligrosas, siendo este, por ejemplo, junto con la opinión consultiva del medio ambiente y la opinión consultiva de cambio climático emitidas por la Corte, ejemplos tangibles de cómo resulta importante el diálogo entre los diferentes mecanismos de derechos humanos junto con las Cortes regionales. Como punto número 4, se han establecido iniciativas con los otros mecanismos. Por ejemplo, hace algunos meses, la Corte Interamericana de Derechos Humanos, junto con la Corte Europea, celebró también, mediante una plataforma digital, un acercamiento con los equipos legales de ambas cortes, permitiendo intercambiar legislación y estándares en diversos temas, incluyendo temas de medio ambiente. Los desafíos aún se mantienen, y ese es mi segundo punto. El primer desafío es en la implementación de sentencias. Sin lugar a dudas, el talón de Aquiles en el sistema regional sigue siendo la brecha que existe entre la emisión de una sentencia y la ejecución de los remedios. Sin embargo, la Corte Interamericana tiene un área específica para supervisión de sentencias y esperamos poder mejorarla junto con los ejemplos que se puedan conversar en esta mesa de otros mecanismos. Por supuesto, un segundo límite son los desafíos en el presupuesto. La Corte Interamericana depende del presupuesto determinado por el organismo de Estados Americanos y la cooperación internacional. Y dentro de estos dos contextos, la contribución de la Corte Interamericana principalmente responde al desarrollar una jurisprudencia robusta en donde, a través de una interpretación no literal, pero al contrario evolutiva y pro persona, es que busca ampliar los límites de los distintos derechos, y con ello tenemos justamente la opinión consultiva de cambio climático recientemente notificada, en donde se analiza la naturaleza como sujeto de derecho, el derecho a un clima sano, entre otros aspectos que sin lugar a dudas van a servir para poder implementar una jurisprudencia común entre todos los países. Lo que vemos en adelante es la consolidación de una jurisprudencia en cambio climático, el poder hacer más fuertes los mecanismos de supervisión y el poder desarrollar sinergias interregionales que permitan justamente mantener el diálogo entre todos los cuerpos de derechos humanos. So cooperation is not a luxury, it's an imperative. No regional system can claim to defend human rights in isolation. The universality of rights demands universality of efforts. For the Inter-American Court, partnership with the United Nations has never been more urgent. The challenges we face, climate change, corporate accountability, digital transformation, are transnational but by nature. They demand responses that transcend borders, institutions, and jurisdictions, of course within the limits of our independent mandates and faculties. As jurists, as institutions, and as a community committed to human dignity, our collective responsibility is to ensure that human rights are not aspirational promises but enforceable realities. By working hand in hand, United Nations and regional mechanisms alike, we can strengthen the rule of law, reinforce democracy, and most importantly, bring justice to those who need it the most. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. I would like now to introduce Mrs. Hilary Wyke, the legal officer of the Office of the President of the Caribbean Court of Justice. Madam Wyke provides high-level legal, strategic, judicial, and policy support to the President of the Caribbean Court of Justice. You have the floor, Madam.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, all, and as in greetings from the Caribbean Court of Justice and from the President of the Court, the Honourable Mr. Winston Ash. It's my pleasure to be here today to briefly present on the activities of the CCJ since the last workshop in 2022, sorry. Before I begin, I'd like to briefly contextualize the CCJ. The CCJ was established by the agreement establishing the Caribbean Court of Justice, and it serves the Caribbean and the CARICOM regions. It has dual jurisdiction, an appellate jurisdiction, and an original jurisdiction. In the former, it is a final court of appeal of 5 Caribbean states: Barbados, Belize, Guyana, Dominica, and St. Lucia. In the original jurisdiction, it functions as an international court vested with compulsory and exclusive jurisdiction to interpret and apply the revised Treaty of Sharia, an economic treaty which underpins CARICOM's single market and economy. While neither jurisdiction is strictly focused on human rights, the court's interpretation is often informed by international human rights law. In the appellate jurisdiction, for example, member states have written constitutions which enshrine certain fundamental rights, many of which can be found in international instruments such as the European Convention on Human Rights and the American Convention on Human Rights. So the CCJ examines these instruments and related jurisprudence in its judgments. In interpreting the RPC, the court has explicitly acknowledged that the revised treaty authorizes the court to apply such rules of international law as may be applicable, of which human rights law is an inextricable part. Beyond adjudication, human rights-based issues are often considered in the court's outreach work, as we are the sole apex court located in the region with a mandate to enhance regional judicial capacity and performance. And lastly, we have 2 affiliate organizations, the Caribbean Association for Judicial Officers, or CAJU, and the CCJ Academy for Law, which conduct outreach work focusing on judicial education and legal education and reform respectively, which often partner with human rights bodies. Since the 2022 workshop, several recommendations were made, and one of them was that cooperation between regional human rights mechanisms and the UN needs to be strengthened and institutionalized in a structured manner, for example, in the form of MOUs. This recommendation has come to fruition for the court in the form of 2 significant partnerships that the court entered into in 2022 and 2024. In 2022, the court began the joint advocacy for the Inter-American Human Rights Standards and Technical Cooperation with the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, with a formal cooperation agreement being signed in 2024 for 3 years. The court has engaged in a series of interventions with the Inter-American Commission, notably 4 high-level dialogues between commissioners and judges of the CCJ, where we have discussed commonalities in areas such as access to justice, due process of law, protection of vulnerable groups, equality and non-discrimination. The CCJ has also participated in technical workshops on the Commission's processes and procedures and been granted access to the massive open online course on the Inter-American Human Rights System. We at the CCG have also facilitated the submission of our case law, which has cited inter-American human rights system jurisprudence. In 2024, the court also signed an MOU with UNESCO, which established a formal framework for joint initiatives, strengthening the court's knowledge relating to human rights, particularly freedom of expression, public access to information, and safety of journalists, and the challenges related to these. Pursuant to an MOU with UNESCO, I wish to highlight a recent collaboration that took place in September 2025, where we hosted a webinar on artificial intelligence and rule of law. Artificial intelligence is a hot topic in the Caribbean right now. We see the increased use of AI in case preparation, drafting, legal research, and the use of fictitious cases and proceedings. And these MOUs have been welcomed by the bench and the courts and indicate a further commitment by the court to advance human rights through cooperation. Our collaborations with the Inter-American Commission and UNESCO have made it possible to implement the recommendation of specialized training programs. The most obvious challenge is that we are not strictly a human rights court, we're neither policy-making or legislative body. So with respect to business-related rights, or indeed any human rights, the court can only exercise its jurisdiction with respect to alleged breaches when a matter comes before it. And our duty is to hold the state or other branches of the state accountable for alleged rights breaches and deliver effective remedies. So how does the CCG cooperate with other regional human rights mechanisms? As I mentioned, we look at international law instruments and jurisprudence for guidance. This necessarily results in the CCG referencing and citing jurisprudence from other regional and international human rights courts in its judgments, and sometimes we ask for assistance in that regard. We also invite the amicus, invite parties amicus. One case I want to mention is OO and EK versus the Attorney General of Barbados, where the appellant sought a ruling that the phrase former spouse, as used in the domestic violence legislation, was not time limited. To assist the appeal, we invited amicus, interested bodies with significant information to file the application to assist the courts. And one of the organizations was UN Women, who provided useful statistics, anecdotal data, and research on the development of domestic violence legislation across the Caribbean region. We also monitoring the case of Mali Alliance and the Attorney General of Belize, which was decided in 2015, and where the court found that the government of Belize had an obligation to take positive steps to recognize Maya customary land tenure and the land rights flowing therefrom. We have as part of our cooperation, we invited the Inter-American Commission to observe these hearings. We also, at an institutional level, are open to giving access to our jurisprudence. And we have received requests in that regard where courts might ask for assistance in addressing our jurisprudence, which may assist them in addressing human rights cases before that. We also, in terms of cooperation and collaboration, it comes in the form of extrajudicial activities of judges in various areas. One thing I want to highlight is in 2023, our former President, Justice Saunders, he presented on the savings law clause in constitutions of Caribbean countries and the impact on the protection of human rights, where he highlighted the divergence between the court and privy council and how these clauses present in our Caribbean constitution hinder the full enjoyment of fundamental rights for certain marginal groups, such as the LGBTQI population. And our affiliate organizations, CAJO and the CCG Academy for Law, have frequently collaborated with organizations such as UN and the UNDP to participate in their outreach activities. Next slide. I'd also like to highlight, as a best practice, we have approved a policy to improve access to justice for persons with disabilities. And this comes after 2 years of research and internal stakeholder engagement. Several UN instruments and resources were used in developing this policy. As to enhancing our cooperation, one area I want to mention, of course, our procedural rules allow for a specific person or body to assist us as amicus. And this is one way that regional human rights mechanisms can collaborate with the court to advance and protect human rights. We also open and we look forward to opportunities for jurisprudential dialogue, judicial education, capacity building, and cooperations with other international human rights mechanisms, regional human rights mechanisms. This ensures that our judges and legally trained staff are up to date with current best practices and the court's jurisprudence is aligned with international human rights law principles and standards. CAGU and the Academy as well through webinars, conferences, and workshops targeted to digital officers and legal practitioners also welcome this collaboration and there's wide-reaching engagement across the region with the judiciary and the legal profession. As to concrete activities, the Inter-American Commission will be hosting a webinar with us on access to justice for vulnerable groups in October, and in November we'll be having a 5th high-level dialogue between the institutions where the focus will be on the challenges with protection against human rights abuses in the criminal justice system. And before I end, I must briefly mention the OHCHR fellowship, where we were unable to nominate and send a representative in 2024. However, we view this as a critical opportunity for strengthening our relationship with the OHCHR, deepening our understanding of the UN human rights system, and promoting mutual cooperation and institutional strengthening and knowledge exchange. And we hope that the program continues. So I thank you for this opportunity for sharing insights from the court. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam White, and thank you for mentioning at the end of your statement the fellowship program for staff of regional human rights organizations. Of course, we will continue with this practice and this fellowship because we find that it has a lot of value, both for regional organizations and for the United Nations. Dear participants, in panel 2, we heard contributions on agenda item 1, taking stock of the recommendations and the implementation of the recommendations of the previous workshop and suggestions for enhancement of cooperation from in panel 2 from the Southeast Asia region and the Americas region. At panel 1, we heard also contributions from the African continent. In panel 3, we're going to hear from Europe regional organizations. And then, of course, after lunch in the afternoon, we're going to move to agenda item 2, which is the thematic focus of this workshop, the advancing of right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. For the time being, we are still at panel 2 with representatives from Southeast Asia and the Americas, and I now open the floor for any questions, proposals, comments. Any questions to the panel? Yes, please. Introduce yourself, please. We don't have, sorry, we don't, oh yeah. All right.
Is this working
Yeah,
now?
yeah, it's working. Sorry.
My name's Kirk Boyle, I'm with United Rights, and we work on the regional court systems, and in particular, we're looking at their potential for expansion. So my question is for 3 of you, Mr. And pardon me if I mispronounce your name, but Al-Shihi and Mr. Ban Taisun and Ms. Wan Mo Singh. The 3 of you, you're all together there. So my question is for all 3, but it is slightly different in that I'm asking, and it was interesting to hear the discussion of one mention of a joint platform in the Middle East. And then also the regional connectedness in the ASEAN. So the question is, to what extent do the 3 of you support the creation of a regional court, a Middle Eastern regional court, similar to the European and the Inter-American and African? And same for ASEAN, to what extent would you be in favor of a regional court along similar lines as the existing regional courts? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I'm going to take a few other questions, if any, and then we'll I give the floor to the distinguished panelists for answers. Any other questions, comments? I don't see any, then maybe we can move to the panelists. Perhaps we can start with our distinguished representatives from the Middle East, please.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. شكرا على توجيه السؤال فيما يتعلق بإنشاء محكمة إقليمية. ما في شك نحن في لجنة الميثاق العربي للإنسان ندعو لإنشاء المحكمة. هناك أيضا مشروع محكمة عربية لحقوق الإنسان تنتظر الانضمام إلى واكتمال عدد الدول المنضمة إليها تجد النور بإذن الله في العهد القريب، ولكن نحن نؤيد إنشاء مثل هذه المحكمة. شكرا.
Thank you. Any other comments from the panel? Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for that question. At ASEAN, the issue has been raised many times. We have civil society organizations and engagements with different bodies and experts that have suggested that ASEAN moves in a way that provides for such a platform. But officially at the leaders level, more discussion needs to happen. We are now more focused on enhancing our protection work and protection mandate through the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights. And this year we have seen through increased participation of civil society, a much more responsive body that provides for both promotion and protection of human rights. One challenge has been to ensure, even at our baseline, the 10 member countries and the 11 country Timor-Leste that will join us in October has a baseline of international human rights standards localized in our national laws completely. And I think that is one very important step that needs to be taken before the move towards an establishment of the human rights court can actually actualize. Thank you.
Thank you for your reply. Any other comments from the panel?
From me.
Yes, please, go ahead.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. أشكر الزميل على سؤاله في نظرة لإنشاء محكمة في الشرق الأوسط تعني في مسائل حقوق الإنسان. أنا من المؤيدين لهذا التوجه في إنشاء محكمة في منطقتنا العربية على وجه الخصوص، وهي هناك مشروع لهذه المحكمة مثل ما تفضل زميلي زميل محمد الشحي رئيس لجنة الميثاق. هناك مشروع للمحكمة عربية وجاري العمل على استكمال باقي التصديقات لوجود هذه المحكمة. من الشيء الطبيعي أن يكون لتطور الحالة الحقوقية في منطقتنا العربية أن تكون هناك محكمة على الرغم من وجود آليات الشكاوى على المستوى الوطني، ولكن هذه الآليات أعتقد أنها ليست بكافية. يتطلب اليوم أن تكون هناك محكمة عربية تعني بحقوق الإنسان تتلقى فيها الشكاوى والبلاغات وتنظر في انتهاكات والمسائل المتعلقة في كافة مسائل حقوق الإنسان. شكرا.
Many thanks for your reply. I'm mindful of the time. I'll take just one more question from or comment from the floor. Bahrain, you have the floor.
سيد الرئيس، في الحقيقة سأستفيد من خدمات الترجمة. أرحب بالأخوان السيد الشحي والسيد الضيري. أشكركم على ما قدمتم المداخلات وأثني على ما أشرتوا له فيما يتعلق بالمحكمة العربية لحقوق الإنسان. في الحقيقة مملكة البحرين كانت هي صاحبة الدعوة لإنشاء محكمة عربية لحقوق الإنسان في العام 2013 أمام القمة العربية أو الاجتماع الوزاري اللي حصل في الدوحة. بعد ذلك تم تشكيل لجنة من مجموعة من الخبراء القانونيين لإعداد النظام الأساسي. في الحقيقة تشرفت بأن أكون جزء من هذه اللجنة، وعملنا من خلال الوفد الرسمي لمملكة البحرين على إعداد مشروع النظام الأساسي للمحكمة العربية لحقوق الإنسان. استمر العمل على هذا المشروع مدة سنة كاملة. تمكنا من النجاح في صياغة مسودة وقعت في الاجتماع الوزاري، وتم إقرارها في الحقيقة في العام 2014، وأصبحنا الآن أمام النظام الأساسي للمحكمة العربية لحقوق الإنسان. تكون من 37 مادة بشكل أساسي. في المادة 35 نص على آلية دخول هذه المحكمة للنفاذ بانضمام أو بتوقيع 7 من أعضاء المجموعة العربية. الآن يوجد عضوين في الحقيقة أعضاء المجموعة العربية هم المملكة العربية السعودية والسودان، من صدق على النظام الأساسي لهذه المحكمة، بانتظار تصديق باقي الوفود العربية، باقي أعضاء المجموعة العربية. المحكمة مشروع طموح يهدف لتأثير بيئة وحاضنة وجهة انتصاف إقليمية على المستوى الإقليمي، تتعامل مع الشكاوى أو الدعاوى الواردة بانتهاكات لحقوق الإنسان بعد استنفاذ الإجراءات على المستوى الوطني. نأمل إن شاء الله في الأجل القريب أن يتم التصويت على هذه الاتفاقية من العدد المطلوب. في الحقيقة مملكة البحرين هي التي تحتضن المقر هذه المحكمة. نأمل إن شاء الله نتمكن من القيام بهذه المهمة، والعمل جاري على الانتهاء من التصديق على هذه النظام الأساسي المهم، واللي هو يأتي في إطار دعم الجهود العربية والإقليمية لإيجاد منظومة متكاملة موازية للمنظومات الوطنية فيما يتعلق بحماية والتأمين واحترام حقوق الإنسان على المستوى الوطني وانطلاقا على المستوى الإقليمي. شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you so much for your contribution, Bahrain. And I would like to thank wholeheartedly the distinguished members of the panel for your contributions. And I would like to invite the members of panel 3 to the podium. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much
for coming.
Say hello and thanks for this wonderful moderation. So from the museum.
Yes.
There's a quick by any chance some few minutes during by the of coffee or lunch break after this, because I really wanted to follow up of those 3 issues that Marit mentioned about this fellowship and the work. So
yeah, let's do it if you want after panel 3.
Immediately. Mr. Work, thank you so much. Would be great discussion. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good seeing you. Oh, that's me. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you.
Hello.
How are you? How are you? Thanks for being here.
So I'm Miriam from the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Hello. Very important from the Office of Human Rights.
Okay, that's good.
Oh, okay. Oh.
I mean, we can switch.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Then.
So,
am I in the right?
Yes.
Is it okay if I sit here? Okay.
Yeah, yes, and I saw your replacement of the Committee of Ministers.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
that's true.
yeah. And are you enjoying your new role?
I just need to.
Listening. I'm senior advisor to Minister of Justice.
Andre, okay, I have to ask Andre how the pronounced is pronounced.
Yes,
You just
it sounds good.
Andre and the last name?
Visit.
Mancevic, okay. Just need to Rafael Benitez. Benitez. No, I'm not gonna realize. Benitez. Yeah, no, I'm just my Latino friend said we have to. I mean, when I started with this, no, that's not gonna work with us. But yeah, but
At the moment, we don't have Miss Yuban.
we don't have.
We don't see her in the room, so we'll just see if she's here ready. If not, then we start.
Okay.
We'll just
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
This is busy times.
Can I just ask, I think, so Mr. Ali? Okay, that's what I wanted to ask, because even watching Turkish series, I still don't get the accents always right. So it's Achi Ali?
Yeah,
Achi Ali.
very good pronunciation.
Achi Ali Ashkegun?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Well, I'll have to repeat it now. I think for the rest is, so you're Zoe?
Yes.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
Andre, Thea, and this is Thea.
Yeah.
Okay, nice to meet you. Chagashvili. Okay. I don't know if we should wait a little more for the sixth panelist or. I think we should, shall we, yeah, just to see, because we're waiting for the sixth panelist. But,
We can start. It's just we can make that one. The previous panel.
okay.
Adam spontaneously, that's fine for you.
Yeah. I mean, as long as I have the name, yeah. It should work. Okay. Thank you. I think we should be moving to our panel 3. I'm happy to see some known faces in the room. And we are very short on time, so in order not to waste time and to leave some opportunities for questions and answers, I would like, without further ado, to be giving the floor to our panelists. Normally, we should be having 6 panelists. I understand one of the panelists might not be here, but could be replaced by someone else. We are having an overview now of this continuity of the matter in order to have, I would say, a retroactive view as to the past practices and what has worked and what are the challenges, but also a prospective one as to what is being foreseen in the future. So we have a cross-regional panelist, and then more on the European region. So the first panelist is Dr. Achiali Achigul. He is the chairperson of the organization of the Independent Permanent Commission on Human Rights of the Organization of the Islamic Cooperation, and he is also the head of the Human Rights Department at Turkey's Ministry of Justice. He has been a member of the Independent Commission since March 2019 and has also chaired its working group on Palestine since November 2019. So, Dr. Achiali, you have the floor.
Thank you. Honorable Chair, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Independent Permanent Human Rights Commission, IPHRC, of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, I have the honor of representing a cross-regional human rights mechanism mandated by 57 member states, spanning over 4 continents and serving more than 2 billion people worldwide. At the onset, kindly allow me to commend the team at the UN Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights for excellent arrangement and coordination of this annual meeting. I also avail of this opportunity to appreciate and acknowledge the valuable cooperation extended by the UN, especially the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in conducting various activities in collaboration with IPHRC and sharing of best practices. It has successfully capitalized on the extensive reach and influence of the UN with the unique cultural and regional perspectives of the OIC, fostering a more inclusive approach to human rights advocacy. By working together, UN and IPHRs can effectively address diverse human rights challenges, promote mutual understanding, and bridge gaps between different cultural and legal frameworks. The synergy between the UN and IPHRC not only strengthens international human rights mechanisms, but also underscores the importance of global solidarity and cooperation. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in the past, IPHR has benefited from participation of UN in its activities, which include participation of expert panelists in the thematic debates and international seminars. The most significant contribution of the IPHRC is that it has brought a paradigm shift in mainstreaming of human rights into affairs of governance and development within the member states. Also, IPHRC has played its role in revisiting the basic human rights instrument leading to adoption of the Cairo Declaration of the OIC on Human Rights in a manner that it brings compatibility between Islamic values and universal human rights standards. These normative standards setting process have been accomplished through consultation with UN experts. IPHRC regularly participates in the UN debates in Geneva and New York, and also participates as expert panelists in side events held by the OHCHR. The IPHRC and UN cooperation is not a one-way traffic. Both entities have benefited from this engagement. The IPHRC is actively contributing in international normative standards setting and implementation mechanisms at regional and international level. IPHRC is extending support to OHCHR for finalization of a legally binding convention on the right to development. In this regard, Abu Dhabi Declaration of IPHRC and various pronouncements continue to support the process. During its regular session held in July 2014, IPHRC has adopted the Jeddah Declaration on the guiding principle on artificial intelligence governance and human rights. UN can benefit from this foundation document, which not only reinforces a collective commitment to responsible and accountable AI deployment, but also positions of OIC as a proactive contributor in global digital governance dialogues for the implementation of the Global Digital Compact. The IPHRC had a thematic debate on climate change and environmental protection, a human rights perspective, which brought together UN and OIC experts and stakeholders to examine the nexus between environmental governance and the protection of fundamental rights. The discussion reaffirmed the Commission's strong support for recognizing the right to a healthy environment as an independent and universal human right, underscoring its centrality to the enjoyment of other basic rights and the achievement of sustainable development. Excellency, there is no denying the fact that despite enormous complementaries, cooperation between IPHRC and UN has remained dormant. It is never too late for sincere introspection to identify the lapses and make course correction. The cooperation needs to be intensified and institutionalized in a structured manner in the form of agreed roadmap, which would help formalize the interaction. This year, IPHR shall be holding a thematic debate on the topic of youth development in OSCE member states. I urge the UN to nominate experts to participate in this thematic debate. Also, there is a need for intensifying the cooperation by implementing the UN-OSCE cooperation metrics, which was agreed at the Astana, Kazakhstan in July 2024. Finally, before concluding, I wish to present few practical recommendations for effective implementation of the agreed projects. Firstly, define specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound objectives for each identified activity and specific responsibilities of each institutions for implementation. Secondly, identification of financial and budgetary responsibilities of the coordinating and participating institutions. Thirdly, utilize digital tools and innovative approaches to enhance efficiency and effectiveness to improve communication, data collection, and monitoring of progress. Fourthly, utilize online methods for organizing meetings, workshops, and capacity building activities to conserve resources. Finally, develop robust monitoring and evaluation framework and follow-up mechanisms to monitor the progress and remove any obstacles hindering implementation. This can be in the form of the Joint Monitoring Committee for Working Group to benchmark the progress. I look forward to productive discussions and wish you all a successful outcome to build a stronger and more structured cooperation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Achigul, and also thank you for the concrete recommendations you made at the end of your presentation. I would like to move now to Mr. Rafael Benitez, who is the Director of Social Rights, Health and Environmental Council of Europe. And you have over 30 years of experience in international governance and human rights, and you lead the implementation of the Council of Europe's new strategy for the environment, promoting environment protection and human rights. So, Mr. Benitez, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. It's a pleasure to be here and address you here today on behalf of the Council of Europe. I'm not here alone. As you can see, we came in strength because I'm accompanied by my colleagues from the European Court of Human Rights and from the Office from the Commissioner of Human Rights of the Council of Europe. And these are but some of the institutions we have more. So just to say how delighted we are here, because the one principle that defines our cooperation is one of complementarity. And not surprisingly, we work very much together in the area of human rights, and we share common values in that respect. And so I will try to be short and to the point and address the issues of what activities the Council has undertaken to implement relevant recommendations of the previous report, what have been the challenges and best practices, the potential for strengthening our cooperation, and initiatives that we could commit towards the workshop 2028. And I will try to do that, notwithstanding, of course, the contributions that my colleagues will make in respect of the court and the Commissioner's office. So at the outset, I'd like to say that, as you well know, the Council of Europe is a treaty-making machine, is a monitoring machine for the standards that it sets, and it's a cooperation machine. And not surprisingly, there have been developments, some of which you have mentioned already, in the area of environment with the adoption of an important package of measures in May this year, including this new strategy of the Council of Europe on environment with 5 strategic objectives, some of which no doubt will resonate with the work of your office and all of you here present, relating to the recognition of the right to a healthy environment, or the role of environmental human rights defenders, among other things. There's also interesting developments in terms, and you'll hear this from my colleague from the court, of not only the decisions that have been taken by the court, but the execution of those decisions, which is underway, and is helping us very much in moving forward, very much in line with the strategic objectives that I've just referred to. But there have been more developments. There has also been the adoption of a convention on the protection of environment through criminal law. And of course, there's an ongoing discussion on the feasibility of additional instruments on human rights and environment. And I'll be touching up on these later on in panel 5. There have also been developments, and we just heard some of it coming from the Organization of Islamic Conference in the field of artificial intelligence, with the adoption of the first ever international treaty, a framework convention governing artificial intelligence, a convention which is open to all member states, obviously, of the organization, but also open to other non-member states. So this convention is obviously gathering a lot of interest on part of the international community as it sets the standard in terms of international law today. There have also been significant developments in the area of social rights, with a reinforcement of the work of the organization in the field of social rights, some of which touch directly on the issues that we will be discussing these days, because there are obviously direct implications of coming directly from environment-related challenges, and of course lots of work in the area of business and human rights. At the same time, we continue to work in projects in member states and some non-member states. And I would just like to highlight, by way of example, the project on enhancing social protection in Ukraine, with also some implications relating to environment. In general, projects align to the Council of Europe standards that are helping national policies and practices to take into account these legislative developments. We also work very much on awareness raising and capacity building, and in this respect, I touch directly in the recommendations, paragraph 8 and 9. We have developed over the years a very important set of online courses. It's called HELP. It's human rights education for legal professionals, available in many languages. And I think perhaps something that could also be looked into in terms of concrete cooperation as we move forward to other regions of the world. And last but not least, of course, we contribute actively to the EU PR exercises, providing up-to-date information on the state of play concerning the states under review. And this comes from the standard settings that I have just referred to, but the results of the monitoring that come directly from the field and the activities that we conduct so that we help not only ourselves, but also all their institutions and mechanisms, including yours, assess and formulate recommendations. Likewise, the Council of Europe is regularly contributing to the calls issued by the special rapporteurs and the special bodies of the UN system. Likewise, we benefit from the UN findings, including your own. And a good example, as I said, is the supervision of the execution of the judgments, which I mentioned. And in this particular case, I would like to refer to the relations to the Russian Federation, a country which is no longer a member state of the Council of Europe, as you know. But nevertheless, we proceed on the basis of the information that is collected inter alia from the reports of a special rapporteur on the Russian Federation, Ms. Hatsarova, and other UN-related sources in this respect. I think it's fair to say, ma'am, that there are regular exchanges between the Council of Europe and this office, and I think this helps us very much. I think we could perhaps push that a little bit further by institutionalizing some form of high-level senior officials meeting between our organizations, where others could participate and perhaps in a more focused fashion devise areas of common interest that could be carried over to ensure that the commonly shared objectives and findings that we establish can be implemented. By way of example as well, to illustrate this cooperation, I'd like to refer to the contribution of the Council of Europe to the UN Business and Human Rights Forum in November, where the Council of Europe will co-sponsor one of the sessions, and we ourselves will have the first business forum on the 21st of October 25th this year on business, rights, actions, values, and ethics, BRAVE, in the context of a project dedicated to business and human rights, and we very much count on you to participate in that event. So to wrap it up, ma'am, to say that there is indeed a huge potential to tap upon. We are on track. Obviously, there's a very fluent cooperation. We think there is the possibility of doing more. building not only on the comparative advantages of each of our organizations, but on the wealth of information standards and overall recommendations that we set over the years. And we thank you very much for this excellent cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for reminding us that the European system indeed came en force to this panel, and we're very much gratified by that. Yeah, you were mentioning the institutional cooperation, and there are also the organic one. I mean, that comes I just would like to share that coming from this part of the House, which is working on individual communication with the treaty bodies. We are definitely, working very much with the system and including with the European one, I would say very much organically, and also, of course, on a more institutional based level. I just got a note that because the panelists are doing their best to keep up with the 5 minutes that have been allocated to them, so they maybe speak a little bit too fast for the interpreters to be able to do their work in a comfortable manner. So I would say we will have to basically balance the need to keep up with the time and the possibility for the interpreters to do their work. I'm the first one to have to do that. I tend to speak sometimes too fast. Thanking Mr. Benitez, we move now to our third panelist, Ms. Zoe Branston-Cross, who is the Deputy Head of the Office of the President at the European Court of Human Rights. I think you've been in this position since 2024?
Yes.
Okay. And you also served as the Legal Advisor Secretary to the Committee of Ministers in the Council of Europe, which oversees the implementation of the court's judgment. I can say that we had also a lot of interaction with with your colleagues. So without further ado, Madam, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the invitation to come and speak to you today. I'm very happy to be here to represent the court. I'll try and find a good balance of speaking speed and brevity in my intervention. So turning to the topic that we have under discussion, I think probably it's important just to highlight that, of course, the European Court of Human Rights, it's an independent judicial body. So speaking about cooperation with other organizations is, of course, important, but there's a limit to how this can be carried out when we're talking about the context of the court's judicial role. But the court, of course, can be informed by the work of the UN as a source of international law and its judgments and decisions. And indeed, it's a well-established part of its case law that this is so. In relation to the thematic topic that we'll talk about today, it's important to highlight, I think, the third-party interventions from the UN bodies, which came in the court's landmark judgment of April 2024, Verein Senioren Schweiz and others against Switzerland, in which the court found a violation against Switzerland for failing to ensure its positive obligations to protect the applicants against climate change. So this was mentioned indeed in the opening remarks to this session at the top of the morning, that like in other judgments on various topics, the court refers extensively in that judgment to UN texts, not only those on climate change and environmental protection, but also on the elimination of discrimination against women and other social and cultural rights. But it also importantly accepted third-party interventions from the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, special rapporteurs on toxins and human rights and on the environment, and the independent expert on the enjoyment of all human rights by older persons. So we can see, therefore, that the reference to the various UN texts and input from UN representatives was made out extensively in the manner in which the case was pleaded before the Grand Chamber. And at the same time, reference to those texts and obligations forms a significant part of the European Court's substantive finding of the violation of Article 8 of the Convention, in the sense that its conclusion that member states have a positive obligation to combat climate change flows from their international commitments under the UNFCCC, the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, and the findings of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So we see here that both the UN framework and the procedural input from the UN bodies was highly impactful in the development of the court's judgment.
But the input from the UN bodies didn't end here, because it continued into the enforcement phase of the judgment. And as has been already highlighted, this is supervised by a different part of the Council of Europe and under the convention, that is the Committee of Ministers, which is the Council's intergovernmental body. And under changes made some years ago in the enforcement proceedings before that body, it's possible for international organizations to make submissions into the committee, and they did so in the enforcement phase of the Klima Senioren case. So the Committee of Ministers has received submissions in July and September this year from the UN Special Rapporteur on the promotion and protection of human rights in the context of climate change. And those submissions encouraging further action by Switzerland formed part of the legal analysis that was submitted to the committee when it took its decision. So again, this is not a sort of classic cooperation as such, but it demonstrates very fully that the input from the UN bodies is something that's very much taken into account under the convention mechanisms. So as to other activities relating to the UN, what I would say is that the court must know, of course, what is going on in the UN and what is the output from the various UN bodies and their reporting mechanisms. The court itself is a large organization, and it has a substantive registry that supports its judicial work. And part of the work of this registry is to ensure that all the judges and the drafting lawyers and legal specialists inside the registry know exactly what the output of the UN is on any given topic, and including on environmental protection and climate change. So generally being in, I would say, a sort of alert listening position to the work of all the UN bodies is something that the court is ensuring. And then we can turn finally to looking at more classic cooperation activities with UN and regional bodies, which the court as an institution has been carrying out in recent years. So for example, in October 2024, the registry hosted a seminar with the OHCHR on ensuring refugee law compliant procedures at state borders. In December 2024, the registry hosted a visit, and it was the first one, to Strasbourg from the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, which enabled a great deal of sharing of knowledge about case processing and use of information and digital tools. In February 25, we had a visit from a delegation by the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, including 5 of their judges. And we've also had various online events with other regional courts, the Inter-American courts and others. In fact, I'm pleased to see in the room some faces that I usually see over Zoom. so that's nice for me today, and just shows the importance that these meetings too have in reinforcing the cooperation we have with other bodies. I see my time has elapsed, so I'll draw to a close here. In terms of what we can expect from the future, I think that the streams of types of cooperation and engagement that the court has are ones that need to continue. And of course, we're always open to developing with our regional and UN partners how we might increase those for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like then to move to our 4th panelist, Mr. Andrzej Manskiewicz. I'm sorry, I hope that I pronounced it right. Okay. And he's an advisor at the Office of the Commissioner for Human Rights of the Council of Europe. And I think before that, if you allow me, I'd just like to say that you've been working as a human rights and political affairs officer with the United Nations missions in the field, including MONUSCO and UNSMIL. So you're part of the house. You have the floor. So.
Thank you, dear Chair, dear delegates, dear friends. Thank you for having me on this panel. And my 2 colleagues have already spoken about their work and that of their parts of the House. So I will focus on the perspective of the Office of the Commissioner for Human Rights, which is an independent, non-judicial institution of the Council of Europe. And first, I will maybe say a couple of words on the cooperation, the work that has been done since the last workshop in 2022, with a handful of examples. I think it's fair to say that our office has contributed to numerous UN reports, including those produced as part of the UPR process. And we have also used UN country reports, general comments and statements in our own reporting. And I think there are just too many examples to mention here, but I will give you a flavor of the kind of cooperation that we've had over the past couple of years. Specifically, the hands-on experience of our UN colleagues has been particularly helpful to the Commissioner in the context of the Commissioner's visits to Member States. I'll mention again the cooperation we have received notably from the UN OHCHR monitoring mission in Ukraine, or from the UNHCR presences in Ukraine and Greece. These are perfect examples of the kind of cooperation we've been very grateful to have. We have also carried out joint activities with UN bodies, particularly special procedures. For instance, colleagues from the UN and other regional institutions and organizations took part in our office's consultations on human rights and gender identity in November 2022, and this led to an issue paper published by the Commissioner in 2024. In the run-up to last year's UN Climate Change Conference, we also consulted with OHCHR colleagues and aligned our messages. More recently, we consulted extensively with UN counterparts on the Commissioner's report on externalized migration policies. And I think this is a good example where our work and the work of the UN Special Rapporteurs on the Human Rights of Migrants, and also the work of the peer platform referred to earlier by Professor Mullally is a case where we can show the complementarity of our respective work. And lastly, on business and human rights, which was the topic of the previous workshop, in 2023, our office has published a recommendation on human rights and artificial intelligence. And a part of this recommendation is dedicated specifically to human rights standards in the private sector, and it draws on UN guiding principles. So this, by way of a handful of examples, but all of this is, of course, very well and good. But how we can improve our cooperation even further. And here I would like to mention two good practices which I think could encourage this. Firstly, I'd like to mention the fellowship program that was referred to several times in the course of the panel of the workshop today. First, I believe, by Director Cajon and Sharif. And this is a program that is also referred to in the report of the previous workshop. One of our colleagues, who is a fellow advisor at the Commissioner's Office, is currently such a fellow. She's here in the room, in the back, Agata. In practical terms, it means that she is embedded in the OHCHR structure for a whole month. And I think this is really an extraordinary initiative. And for us at the Commissioner's Office, it has been particularly useful because it helps us to understand better our respective mandates and processes. We can coordinate our actions more effectively. So this goes far beyond the stated aims, I believe, of this program. And I think the only downside is that it is only available, as has been mentioned previously, to a couple of organizations each year. I believe that we should consider how it could be expanded. And I think it echoes comments made previously by the delegate, the Arab Charter Committee, or by the delegate from the Caribbean of Justice. We should also perhaps reflect on how this could be replicated by similar fellowships at the level of the regional organizations, so that we could give exposure to UN colleagues to the work of regional organizations. I think this is something that could be potentially useful. And the second good practice I wanted to highlight are the annual consultations between the Council of Europe and the European Union, in which our office is involved. So once a year, EU colleagues come to Strasbourg to join us in person or online to discuss human rights and political developments in EU candidate countries. And I think this is another example of an annual consultation which helps us to share information, but also to build trust and to learn who is in charge of what. I personally always find these consultations invigorating. But as far as I know, we do not have these kind of consultations in a structured and systematic and annual basis with the UN. I believe it may have existed in the past before COVID, but I don't think it's in place currently. By way of concluding, I think, you know, in the current context of pressures on multilateralism and funding cuts, it might seem perhaps a little bit naive or cheeky to suggest new cooperation tools or to expand existing ones. But I think it's precisely in times like these that it makes sense to reflect on how we can bring our organizations closer together. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to discussions.
Thank you very much. No, you're indeed right that it's through cross-fertilization and working together that we can also, face the challenges that we are all facing in a way. And I thank you also for the good practices that you provide and also how to strengthen them and even improve them further. So I'm sure there's like food for thought for the participants in this exercise. The fifth panelist is Dr. Tea Jaliashvili. I had rehearsed and I managed when I rehearsed, but now it doesn't come, who is the first Deputy Director of the OSCE Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights. Ms. Jaliashvili has extensive experience in strategic policy development, management and administration of technical cooperation programs in the fields of human rights, democracy and the rule of law, and within international, national and non-governmental organization. I think you have been at some point the acting head of the OSCE program office in Dushanbe. So you have the floor, madam. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's indeed a great pleasure to be part of this very important workshop and the timely discussion. Unlike our colleagues from the Council of Europe, with whom we enjoy really great cooperation and coordination, we at the OSCE do not have the legally binding commitments. However, we operate on the politically binding commitments, which represents an extremely important aspects, in particular when we're talking about the broader framework of the comprehensive safety and security, where ODIHR is the pan-European pan-European human rights institution, plays a crucial role in oversighting the third dimensions, so-called third basket. From ODIHR's perspective, of course, we do enjoy, a very great cooperation and coordination under the overall umbrella of the human rights enjoyment, in particular with the Office of the High Commissioner, and of course, this cooperation extends, including the issues that we complement to each other in terms of the treaty and charter-based mechanisms, and it has been mentioned, of course, UPR mechanism on the other hand mentioned, but let me allow to concentrate today, given the time limitations, on two important aspects, which I think that falls exactly under the Human Rights Council resolution that we are discussing today. And from that perspective, of course, the two main angles that will look into the issues is one, how to advance and cooperate and promote of the human rights defenders, which are extremely important partners and the stakeholders in the bigger human rights dimension component, and on the other hand, how to address the climate-induced migration, because we are witnessing a lot of deterioration in that regards, where again the human rights defenders play a huge role, and then there is a need, to look into these aspects. From the latter perspective, at this moment in time, we are developing a very comprehensive program where we will look aiming at strengthening the migration management and integration frameworks through providing capacity building, policy guidance, and of course fostering multi-stakeholder dialogue and thereby promoting social cohesion, protecting the migrants' rights, and addressing emerging challenges in the migration and the border management. And of course, this comes with an overall objective to strengthen the integration and social cohesion, to promote the human rights compliant border management, and also to address the emerging migration challenges. In terms of the first very important thing that we were discussing in terms of the human rights defenders, you would agree that across the globe, and of course, I mean, including our region, we are witnessing, democratic backsliding, and of course, shrinking the space of the civil society organizations, including the rights of the human rights defenders, where we don't have this kind of like a precise definition per se, but I mean, of course, which encompasses a lot of people who are advocating and promoting the human rights and fundamental freedoms. And in that sense, of course, it's one of our core activity and principle to support. And on one hand, to detect and report on those violations that these human rights defenders are facing with, including in exile, but on the other hand, to be able to increase their capacities in order to handle those challenges that they're facing. In that regard, one of the very important, regional platform that we have developed, of course, it's a so-called Freedom Lab, and I would really encourage, all of you upon, of course, availability and interest to look into this platform, where we have also developed a Starlight Stadium, where there is a kind of like a simulation of the situations which is extremely important and which we witness and see when we're talking about the human rights defenders, broadly speaking, and something that really supports in order to strengthen their capacities. And last but not least, of course, it's also intrinsically linked with the non-judicial human rights bodies, which is the national human rights institutions, which of course represents another important area where we would like to work with in order to strengthen and highlight these challenges. Dear colleagues, in the interest of the time, I would really agree and with my predecessors, remarks in particular when we're talking about exploring the not only new avenues, but also strengthening the existing frameworks that we already have, whether at the high level or a technical level. And of course, from our perspective, we would be very much interested and grateful to explore also the opportunities of those fellowship programs and also to become a part of this high level discussion. So this is something that we would definitely take away and consider for our future. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We are a bit in a situation here. You may have seen like some frantic exchanges. We have a sixth panelist and we're very short on time. So I'm looking at the interpreters and to see that if they would be kind enough to grant us a few more time, some extra minutes to allow Mr. Nkata Mwiza to make his presentation. I do hope that would be possible. And Mr. Mwiza is the principal legal officer at the African Court of Human and People's Rights, and he is the principal. He's also in charge of the research and capacity building unit of the legal division at the African Court. And sir, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, Excellencies, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I suppose I end up in this odd position because I was delayed and should have been here much earlier. My apologies for that. But quickly, in the time that I have, I'd like to present a perspective from the African Court on Human and People's Rights, speaking to some of the activities that we've been undertaking in terms of implementing the recommendations from the 2022 workshop. And time permitting, I would also try to speak to some of the challenges, the best practices that we have experienced and implemented over the years. So in terms of some of the activities, I think one of the things that I should flag very prominently here is that the court has actively cultivated relationships with other regional human rights organizations and other institutions. So the court has formalized memoranda of understanding with almost all regional human rights courts, as well as with the Office of the High Commission for Human Rights. These memoranda are the bedrock for cooperation that the court enjoys with the other human rights mechanisms. By way of example, the court has an active memorandum of association of understanding with the Community Court of Justice of the Economic Community of West African States. And under this, several activities been undertaken involving judges, but also involving staff at registry level, including exchange visits for sharing practices, sharing experiences on good practices that can be undertaken in terms of managing registries. A similar MOU is also in place with regard to the East African Court of Justice. I should also point out that amongst the three institutions in the East African Court of Justice, the African Court, and the ECOWAS Court, there have been to this point 2 tripartite dialogues, with the last one being held in 2024 September. Again, the spirit is the same: to get together, share experiences, and learn from each other in terms of how best to promote and protect human rights. In the same spirit of dialogue with other regional human rights organizations, the court also participates in the Human Rights Forum, which is also a tripartite activity. It involves the African Court, the European Court, and the Inter-American Court. I think the latest edition of this activity will be hosted by the African Court, likely in November of this year. The court had participated before that in the edition that was held in San Jose, Costa Rica, I think two or so years ago. Apart from the cooperation and the memoranda that the court has negotiated, we have noted over the years certain challenges that are common to the operations of the court, but also to the other partner institutions. So implementation of decisions of the African Court, for example, remains a big challenge, and the implications of this go to the legitimacy of the court itself. But in our engagement with other sister institutions, we've learned that this is not a unique challenge to the African Court, which then also creates space for learning from other institutions as to how best to deal with such a challenge. In the context of the African Court, the court has also been buffeted by a repudiation of its mandate. Some states that were parties and had granted direct individual access to the court have over the years withdrawn that grant of individual access, meaning that the court, although it exists, is not reachable by the majority of the populace in Africa, the very area that it is meant to be serving. I think that is another fundamental challenge which goes to the very foundations of the court as an institution. In terms of progress, over the years, we've noted that there's been progress in terms of sharing information, say, for example, in relation to pending applications, and the resolution of requests for information on pending applications seems to be having a faster turnaround than was the case a couple of years back. The court has also developed a system of national focal persons to help with liaison with the particular countries that are that are parties to the protocol establishing the court. This is yet a work in progress, but I think it does hold potential for the engagement, direct engagement between the court and the various state parties. Finally, there's a project that we are piloting, which I think I should bring to the attention of everyone. We're calling it African Jurisprudence Database. The idea is to create one space where we can have access to all jurisprudence by the African human rights institutions, including the court, the commission in Banjul, the committee in Maseru, the East African Court of Justice, and as well as the Community Court of Justice for ECOWAS. Again, this is a work in progress, but we have very high expectations that this would simplify access to the jurisprudence of many of these regional human rights institutions in Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muiza. And jurisprudence, African Jurisprudence Database sounds like music to the ear of some of us. I would like to thank the panelists for the informative presentation, for their presence, and for sharing with us also how they see things would move ahead. I would like to sincerely thank the interpreters for their kind generosity in additional time. And you participants, I'm sorry there would not be time for Q&As for this session, but I'm sure you'll have other opportunities in other panels. Thank you very much and bon appétit.
Thank you.
Thank you.